The next morning, Long Chen gathered with 3,000 people in the Grand Xia's imperial palace. These people were foundation forging experts and had yet to reach their 30s. They were the experts that the Grand Xia sent to enter the Four Nations' ancient remnant. It could be said that they were the Grand Xia's elites. Previously, Long Chen had learned from Xia Yunchong that the Four Nations' ancient remnant was jointly owned by the four ancient nations. Other than the Grand Xia and the Grand Han, the other ancient nations were the Grand Zhou and the Grand Chu. All of them were around the same level of power, allowing them to maintain a subtle balance. Although these years the Grand Han had managed to raise their power by starting a culture of worshipping idols, in terms of true power, they weren't that different. On the contrary, the Grand Xia had the longest history and greatest foundation. Even the Wine God Palace lay within their borders. Whether it was in terms of name or position, they were ahead of the other three nations. The Grand Zhou and Grand Chu were neither friendly nor hostile with the Grand Xia. Back then, the Grand Xia had had a good relationship with the Grand Han, but later the Grand Han had been too shameless, saying that everything was theirs, causing conflicts to arise between them. However, the four ancient nations had never truly started a war between them. That was because the four ancient nations stood outside the Central Plains cultivation world. The reason they were able to receive the cultivation world's approval was mostly due to the respect toward their inheritances and long-lasting history. If the four nations started a huge war, weakening their power and killing their people, the Central Plains' other powers would take advantage. At that time, their territories would be snatched up, and the four ancient nations would cease to exist. That was why the four ancient nations always acted peaceful, with none of them willing to raise their blades against the others. The possible consequences were too grave. The four nations' ancient remnant had four entrances, which were split between the four ancient nations. Within its historical remains, they could search for treasures, and they would belong to the finders. Others were not allowed to fight against the people who found things. Although there had been quite a few hidden fights within its history, due to their close strength, there hadn't been any large-scale fights. This time, the opening of the four nations' ancient remnant might not be the same as before. You should all be more careful. The Grand Xia's emperor personally appeared before them. Even Xia Yunchong's master was solemnly saying something to Xia Yunchong. After that, they all stepped onto a transportation formation within Grand Xia City. They were brought to a valley near the Grand Xia's border. The valley had a huge formation protecting it, as well as countless experts hiding within. When Long Chen arrived, he saw that the space at the end of the valley was in constant fluctuation. This is one of the four entrances to the four nations' ancient remnant. The spatial channel is still in the midst of forming. It seems it will take a little while longer for it to stabilize, Xia Yunchong explained to Long Chen. Long Chen, can you travel with me once we enter the four nations' ancient remnant? I feel like going with you will definitely bring me more luck and more treasures. Xia Yuluo held Long Chen's hand charmingly. Perhaps it was because she had gotten to know Long Chen that her life had undergone heaven-toppling changes from before. Swindling wine from the Wine God Palace, encountering the elusive music immortal palace's Zi Yen, and even personally seeing the Wine God Palace's high priest, these were all things she had only managed to do thanks to Long Chen. Xia Yuluo had actually started to feel a bit of dependence toward him. Before Long Chen could reply, Xia Yunfeng frowned and said, "Yuluo, don't be rash. Our imperial father has already said that entering the four nations' ancient remnant is also important for Long Chen. He has to search for his own opportunities. You'll end up affecting him like this." Xia Yunfeng was a much steadier person than Xia Yuluo. His temperament was similar to the Grand Xia's emperor, Xia Yun. "It's just a joke. If he doesn't want to bring me along, then fine. My own luck is good enough." Is he so amazing? Xia Yuluo stuck her tongue out at Xia Yunfeng, making a face. While Xia Yuluo could act like a spoiled child towards Xia Yunchong, she wouldn't dare to act that way in front of Xia Yunfeng. Xia Yunfeng was the future emperor, and everything he decided had to be for the nation. He couldn't care so much about familial ties, making him extremely serious and grave, almost to an unreasonable point. Amongst the princes, only Xia Yunfeng could suppress Xia Yuluo. The other princes also had to act well-behaved towards Xia Yunfeng. Long Chen, although we've explored the Four Nations ancient remnant many times throughout the years, many places can only be entered through chance. My imperial father has already said that any opportunities you win in the Four Nations ancient remnant will belong solely to you. There's no need to even mention what you gain to others, said Xia Yunfeng. Many thanks. Hopefully my luck will be a bit better this time. When he mentioned his luck, Long Chen felt disheartened. It seemed he had never had any affinity with that word. But Xia Yuyang truly had some style to allow him, an outsider, to enter the Four Nations ancient remnant. Even the princes of the Grand Xia had to hand over whatever they obtained within to the Grand Xia, and only then would they be rewarded merits based on what they had gained. Yuluo, you should be careful of Han Wenjun during this time. He doesn't have any good intentions, warned Long Chen. He was worried about Xia Yuluo being foolishly tricked. This child was too pure-hearted and naive. I know. Furthermore, the Four Nations ancient remnant is huge. It's unknown whether I'll even run into him, and if I do, I'll just ignore him, said Xia Yuluo. Xia Yunchong and Xia Yunfeng looked at each other and felt more at ease. Only Long Chen could have warned Xia Yuluo about this. If either of them tried, Xia Yuluo would immediately explode and intentionally go against what they said. Xia Yunchong was focusing on the martial Dao, while Xia Yunfeng was the future successor of the Grand Xia. The two of them were close as they were the future pillars of the Grand Xia. One could govern the nation, while one could maintain peace in the nation. They were the two sons that Xia Yang was the proudest of. Although Xia Yunfeng didn't focus completely on the martial Dao, he still possessed exceptional talent. As a rank 8 celestial, his combat power was immense. This time, he would be the leader of the Grand Xia's party in the Four Nations ancient remnant. Everything had been arranged, and now they were just patiently waiting. Just as Long Chen and the others were patiently waiting, on the side of the Grand Han, numerous experts had gathered. Han Wenjun, Li Wanji, and the others were all there. There were two other men beside Han Wenjun who looked somewhat similar to him. Their ages were also similar. These two were the other two members of the Grand Han's three monarchs, Han Qijuan and Han Bijuan. Han Qijuan and Han Bijuan were both princes of the Grand Han, and although they were jointly known as the three monarchs with Han Wenjun, in terms of talent and looks, they were a level inferior to Han Wenjun. That was why Han Wenjun was the leader of the three monarchs, and he was also the future heir to the throne of the Grand Han. The three monarchs were all terrifying rank 8 celestials. The Grand Han had done their best on a national scale to raise them into top geniuses. Behind the three monarchs were 7 other experts, all of whom were rank 7 celestials. They were the Grand Han's 8 princes. Not being a part of the imperial family's main bloodline, they weren't real princes, just the top experts of the branch families. However, one of them had already been slain by Long Chen. Now, the name of the 8 princes had already been removed, because it had become a humiliation. Other than the 3 monarchs and those 7 experts, as well as the Grand Han's other elite disciples, there were dozens of other mysterious figures who were wearing conical hats to conceal their faces. They were all surrounded by a layer of light and quite different from the Grand Han's other experts. Let me first say this, Long Chen is ours. He must be killed by us, the ancient races. One of the figures wrapped in the light was a large, well-built man. He raised his hat slightly, revealing a pair of eagle-like eyes. Those eyes contained countless runes. It was like his eyes concealed a volcano that might erupt with apocalyptic power at any moment. That might not be possible. Long Chen challenged 2 of my Bloodkill Hall's strongholds and destroyed the Killing God statue, blaspheming our God. He has been put at the very top of my Bloodkill Hall's must-kill list. We must use Long Chen's blood to placate the Killing God's anger. A tall, skinny man icily opened his mouth. This man had his face completely concealed by his hat, and not the slightest bit of his aura leaked out. Without personally seeing him, it wasn't even possible to sense his existence. There's no need to fight. Whether it is the ancient races or the Bloodkill Hall, you both hate Long Chen to the bone. But there's only one Long Chen, and it's impossible to split him in half for you. So the person who kills him will be decided by who has the power. But don't forget your agreement with my Grand Han, as well as your promises to each other, warned Han Wenjun. Don't worry, my Pill Valley is supporting this, while the Heavenly Fate Pavilion has done the calculations. There's zero chance of failure. Moreover, I don't care who kills Long Chen, but whatever he has on his body belongs to us. The Tower Master must take Long Chen's items. You understand? Said a pretty-faced man lightly. Although he hadn't released his aura, the space around him was constantly twisting as if he was wrapped in invisible flames that could burn the heavens and incinerate the seas. As long as we can kill Long Chen and erase our disgrace, we won't touch any of his items, said the Bloodkill Hall's expert calmly. He then looked at the ancient race's expert. As for who can wash away their disgrace, it'll be up to who has that ability. However, it seems my Bloodkill Hall is the professional when it comes to that. The prey we set our sights on never manages to escape. Idiot, in the Eastern Wasteland, you started hunting Long Chen when he hadn't even reached the Xiantian realm. You've hunted him for so many years, and he only gets stronger. I even suspect you're intentionally helping him temper his blade, sneered the ancient race expert. You! The Bloodkill Hall's expert turned cold, killing intent suddenly pervading the space, making the world seem as if it had frozen. Let's not talk so much. If you have the ability, use it once you enter the ancient remnant. After you finish your mission, you can search within it, and whatever treasures you gain will belong to you, said the Pill Tower's expert. Just at this time, the channel in front of them completely formed, and they all entered. Han Wenjun sneered sinisterly. Long Chen, Grand Xia, I've said that I'd make you regret it. The Jun in all their names is the same character, and is the character for Monarch. Technically, the 8 princes should be called the 8 little princes to differentiate them from real princes. Heaven and earth shook. The mist rolled out as the spatial channel in front of them gradually stabilized. The channel is ready. Quick, shouted Xia Yunfeng. Because the 4 nations' ancient remnant was a broken world, the channel would only be stable for an extremely short amount of time. They only had a few breaths to enter before it closed. Furthermore, once it closed, it would be impossible to enter again. 7 days later, when the channel once more opened, it would only allow people to leave. Everyone rapidly charged through the channel. Less than a breath's time after their figures vanished, the channel closed, forming a huge vortex in the air. Boom boom boom. Not long after Long Chen and the others entered the 4 nations' ancient remnant, explosions rocked Grand Xia City at 9 different points. The city shook, and countless people looked around in shock, not knowing what had happened. Panicked cries rang out. What happened? Are experts sneak attacking Grand Xia City? Countless experts flew into the air. Chaos raged for a while. Don't panic. It was nothing more than a little prank used to frighten people. There's no danger. Everyone can get back to their business. Xia Yuyang's voice resounded throughout Grand Xia City, calming people. At the same time, news spread that people had detonated 9 explosive talismans in 9 places of the Grand Xia. It had caused a huge disturbance, but it didn't cause any significant damage. Whoever had detonated the talismans had been blown apart by the explosions, so there was no way to tell who had done it. This happened very suddenly, causing quite a fuss. But things quickly calmed down. The Grand Xia's Imperial Guards were investigating suspicious people. But within the Grand Xia's Imperial Palace, Xia Yuyang's face was dark. Beside him, the white-haired elder's expression was also grave. The dragon vein link has been severed. Yun'er and Chong'e, they're all in danger. Xia Yuyang's gaze was electric as terrifying killing intent rose within him. Each of the 4 ancient nations possessed a dragon vein, with the 4 dragon veins looking like they were facing a dragon pearl. They maintained a subtle balance. The dragon veins were condensations of their nation's karmic luck. The emperor of a nation would take up 60% of that karmic luck. The heirs of the emperor would take up 30%, while the remaining 10% was evenly split amongst the commoners. Xia Yuyang was emperor, and he controlled 60% of his nation's karmic luck. That was why there was a dragon vein manifestation around him that Long Chen had sensed. As for Xia Yunchong, Xia Yunfeng, and Xia Yuluo, they were also supported by the dragon vein. Just like Xia Yuyang, they could use a portion of the dragon vein's power to unleash great power. However, after those 9 explosions, the dragon vein karmic luck which was linked to Xia Yuluo and the others had been severed from Xia Yuyang's senses. That made his expression change. Under normal circumstances, if any heirs died, their dragon vein karmic luck would return to the dragon vein, blessing the other heirs. But this time, the connection to their dragon vein karmic luck had been completely severed. That signified great trouble. Someone had set their sights on the Grand Xia's karmic luck. If Xia Yunchong and the others were killed in this state, then 30% of the Grand Xia's dragon vein karmic luck would forever disappear. That was completely unacceptable. If such a thing happened, the Grand Xia would quickly decline until it completely collapsed. It seems they came prepared. But just who was so arrogant as to break the subtle balance between the 4 dragon veins? It's unknown if it's 3 dragons devouring 1 or 1 dragon devouring 3, said the white-haired elder. For their enemies to dare to do such a thing meant they had been preparing for this for a long time. But understanding that now was too late. Xia Yuyang darkly said, "Right now I can only wait for any changes. But if my beloved sons and daughters are all killed, I will definitely make them pay a terrifying price." The white-haired elder sighed. "It seems your ruling skills still aren't perfect. You're already deciding things based on emotion." Xia Yuyang bitterly smiled. "Although I treat them severely and heartlessly, that's simply unavoidable. For the Grand Xia, my Xia family has paid far, far too much. If someone really was willing to take over the Grand Xia and could guarantee the Grand Xia's peace and prosperity, I'd immediately welcome them and surrender the throne. I wish I could live a peaceful life, and I wish we could enjoy familial love like other families. These children are my reverse scale. If they really fall, there's no way I'll consider things from a ruler's point of view. I will purely act as a father getting revenge for his children." Terrifying killing intent rose in Xia Yuyang's eyes. No father was willing to see his children mercilessly slaughtered by others. Perhaps this matter's not as grave as you think. You've forgotten, Long Chen has also gone in. You've already planted the seed, and all that's left is to patiently wait for it to bear fruit, said the white-haired elder. Long Chen flew out of the spatial channel. He saw an unending mountain range in front of him surrounding a calm lake. It was extremely peaceful. Everyone has a map, so let's scatter. Everyone can search for their own opportunities. You may not try to harm others, but you must also be on guard of others hurting you. Be careful. Sometimes, in front of profit, an alliance isn't worth anything, warned Xia Yunfeng. Although according to the Four Nations Treaty, they were not allowed to attack each other within the Four Nations' ancient remnant, sometimes treasures would cause a person to strike out of greed. That was not something rare. One person said that they saw it first, and then someone else said that they saw it first. There was no way to decide the truth of such a thing, so they couldn't foolishly depend on an alliance. Everyone nodded and split up. Their time was limited. They only had 7 days, so they had to go all out searching for their own opportunities and testing their luck. Long Chen checked his map and saw that this world was like a crescent moon. It was like a complete world had been bitten by a huge mouth. The place he was at right now was at a corner of the crescent moon. Xia Yuluo, Xia Yunchong, and the others all said goodbye to Long Chen as they flew out in their own directions. Long Chen also picked a direction, but he had chosen a different one. He was rushing toward the edge of this small world. Although this was a minor world, its territory wasn't that much different from the Grand Xia's. After a couple hours of rushing, he reached the edge of the world. He saw endless darkness before him. It was an abyss that stretched into the sky, and countless spatial blades were flying within. This abyss looked like a monster's mouth that was attempting to devour this world. I've heard that space is layered like a bee's honeycomb. As long as you find the spatial channel, you can go to another world. And even without finding the spatial channel, you can charge through the chaotic space to enter another world. Long Chen took out a king item spear and carefully inserted it into the black space. As a result, the spear shook slightly. When he pulled it out, he was only left with the half that he hadn't stuck in. Yes, they really were right. If you enter the chaotic flow of space, you will truly enter another world. Yup, you'll directly go to see a Yama king in another world, cursed Long Chen. What idiot had come up with that saying? Wasn't that purely trying to get people killed? This pitch-black space contained power that made Long Chen's scalp turn numb. Even king items couldn't go through, let alone people. He followed the edge of the border. A verdant forest appeared in front of him, and as he flew over, his heart suddenly shook. Entering the forest, he had only advanced less than a mile before heaven and earth changed. The thick forest vanished, and an old house appeared in front of him. There was actually an illusion formation here? Just now, as he had been flying over the forest, he had vaguely felt that something was off with the forest below. That was why he had gone down to take a look. But he hadn't thought that the forest was hiding an illusion formation. Before coming, Xia Yunchong had told Long Chen that the Four Nations' ancient remnant was something a supreme expert left behind, a remnant of their life in the mortal world before ascending. It was left behind for people with destiny to search within. In truth, there were many experts who would do something like this, especially cultivators that didn't belong to any sect and had no disciples to impart their inheritance onto. They would leave behind a portion of their inheritance before dying or ascending in hopes of a destined person coming and carrying on their inheritance. This small house was clearly an opportunity. Long Chen was delighted. Could it be that his luck was starting to turn? This small house was very simple, looking just like the home of a secluded farmer. The grass was growing wildly, and there was a simple fence surrounding it. It was full of the air of a farmer's home. Long Chen pushed the wooden door open and walked in. Dust sprinkled around him. This was an extremely ancient hut, and even the wood was starting to rot. The original runes on the wood were starting to peel off. Long Chen knew it was these runes that had supported the house, or it would have long since turned to dust in the river of time. He saw a water jar inside, but it was already dried up. He wiped a finger around it and sniffed it. What pure water energy fluctuations! But there's nothing left behind now. What was inside this water jar was definitely a treasure back then. Long Chen helplessly shook his head. He lightly tapped the water jar, and a light sound rang out. Its runes brightened slightly, and then the jar completely collapsed. The water jar was on the level of a king item, but even for a king item, without spiritual yuan nourishing it, once its runic energy runs out, it will also not be able to stop the encroachment of time, sighed Long Chen. There was a kitchen stove on the side of the wall. The stove had a pitch-black pot on it. Long Chen tapped the pot and found that it was still good. He didn't sense the slightest aura from it though, so he proceeded to place a hand against it. Buzz. The pot suddenly began to wildly absorb Long Chen's spiritual yuan. The rust on it began to slowly fall. This is a treasure. Long Chen was shocked and delighted. This pot still had an item spirit. But he hastily pulled back his hand, because it was absorbing his spiritual yuan at a frightening rate. It was like a person was dying of thirst in the desert and finally encountered a water source. In just a few breaths, the pot absorbed 1/10 of Long Chen's spiritual yuan. Hee, this black pot is definitely something good. I'm taking it. Long Chen reached out to grab the pot. What Long Chen hadn't expected was that this seemingly simple black pot was shockingly heavy. It was like a mountain. This black pot can't be ordinary. Fortunately, I came here before its runes completely failed, or it'd also have decayed. Long Chen blessed his luck. Due to how much time had passed, the black pot's runes had reached the verge of collapsing. Once an item's runes collapsed, even a king item would become nothing more than scrap metal. Just now, Long Chen's spiritual yuan had saved it from the brink. But as for what level of treasure this pot was, he would have to wait until it had recovered to see. Right now, at best, it could only count as having been given a reprieve from death. Long Chen would need to continuously nourish it for a long time before being able to use it, but he didn't have that time right now. The water jar, earthen hearth, black pot, they all made this room look like an ordinary farmer's house. Pushing open another door, he saw a brick bed. It seemed like there should have been various family tools on the bed, but now there was only a pile of dust. Long Chen closed his eyes and sensed his surroundings. He sighed. This wasn't actually an inheritance. It was very likely a childhood memory of this minor world's master. It seemed the master of this world had used this small house as a recollection of their memories. That was because Long Chen saw a few piles of dust that seemed to be a child's toys. For an ordinary farming family's child to end up stepping on the path of cultivation and even ascend to the immortal world, their life had to have been marvelous. But also just from the air of this house, it seemed that this person also had to have been very solitary. They had used the memories of their youth to comfort themselves. Carefully looking around for a while longer, he didn't notice anything valuable. He saw some farming tools that should have been king items, but their runes had already lost effect and they had rusted, becoming scrap metal. Once more walking around and confirming there were no treasures, Long Chen left. He had only just exited the house when he saw two people staring at him. These two were both foundation forging experts who had reached the late stage. A powerful heavenly Tao pressure came from their bodies, and based on their auras, Long Chen judged them to be rank 6 celestials. Their robes had an immortal character on the front. Zhou, meaning they were from one of the 4 ancient nations, the Grand Zhou. Kill him. They exchanged a glance and suddenly attacked at the same time. Sword light struck like lightning as they immediately used killing blows. Long Chen extended his hands and caught their 2 swords. He stared icily at them. The 2 of them were shocked. They had struck as fast as possible, so they hadn't been able to store up energy, but this attack was still 80% of their peak. Furthermore, their swords were exceptionally sharp, as they were both king items. But this fellow in front of them, who didn't even have any heavenly Tao aura, was able to catch them with his bare hands. In your next life, don't be so greedy. Long Chen snorted and pressed forward lightly. The sword hilts in their hands slammed into their chests, directly killing them in body and soul. Their bodies fell to the ground, their eyes listless and still filled with shock. A fist-sized hole had appeared in their chests. Taking their spatial rings, Long Chen looked and didn't see anything valuable inside. The most valuable items were their 2 weapons. Putting away their swords, he patted his hands and left the forest. These 2 experts from the Grand Zhou gave Long Chen a reminder, and he now spread out his divine sense to avoid being sneak attacked. Xia Yunfeng's words had been entirely correct. As long as it was enticing enough, as long as they were strong enough, an alliance was nonsense. Those 2 had moved to instantly kill him without caring about those rules. Right now, the 4 ancient nations experts were spreading out in a net-like pattern from their transportation points in order to search for their own opportunities. There were many spots they might intersect, but opportunities were not things that people could find just by searching. It would be up to a person's luck. Mandara grass. Long Chen suddenly flew to the peak of a cliff. There was foot-long sawtooth-shaped vegetation there. This was a 9th-tier medicinal ingredient, the mandara grass. In truth, it shouldn't be called medicine, but poison. It was easily confused with the mandara flower, because the 2 of them looked the exact same. But the mandara grass would never bloom. Without pollination, it would bear its own fruit. But this fruit was like a soybean, and it alternated between red and green. It was highly toxic. If a person consumed it, their bodies would rapidly inflate until they exploded. But in Long Chen's eyes, this was divine medicine. That was because its fruit could cause his cells to rapidly inflate. Normal people weren't able to endure that and they would explode, but he was different. He could borrow the mandara grass's power to strengthen his physical body. Then he would be able to keep up with the 9-star Hegemon body art's power. Although this kind of strengthening was limited, just increasing the strength of his physical body by 10% would be good. Otherwise, having the power but not being able to release it would drive him crazy. It was like a person had 10,000 pounds of strength, but their physical bodies could only endure 1,000 pounds of force. They would be unable to bring out their true power in battle, and that was too depressing. Placing the mandara grass into his primal chaos space, Long Chen's heart suddenly shook, and lightning flashed around him. He looked like he had teleported, appearing 30 meters to the side. A sword appeared right where Long Chen had been standing. Although Long Chen had reacted in the first moment, the sword still cut across his back, leaving a half-a-foot-long wound. Blood ran down his robes. This sword had come without any warning at all. It had come noiselessly and without the slightest killing intent. Long Chen had only sensed it right before it pierced his clothes. This was an absolutely terrifying attack that would take a person's life before they even realized they were in danger. Long Chen instantly felt a numbing sensation spreading from his back. It was clear this sword had poison applied to it to numb his nerves and slow his movements. Long Chen had only just flown to the side when another figure appeared beside him like a phantom, slashing his sword at him. Light filled the air. Long Chen snorted and circulated the primal chaos bead. The sensation of numbness instantly faded, and Blood Drinker appeared in his hands. Long Chen already knew who his opponents were. With such powerful cultivation bases, with such terrifying assassination arts, and to be even shameless enough to poison their swords, they could only be from the Bloodkill Hall. Just as Blood Drinker was about to meet that person, Long Chen's expression suddenly changed, and he smashed his fist to the side. Bang! A hidden sword was blown away by Long Chen's fist, and space crumbled, revealing another figure. When his fist blocked this sneak-attacking sword, the previous sword that was unleashing blazing light into the sky vanished, and another sword stabbed toward his chest from an inconceivable angle. Long Chen finally realized that the blinding light this person had unleashed had been to block his senses. It hadn't been the true killing blow. The worst thing about this attack was how his assailants were seamlessly cooperating. There was simply no way to dodge. The sword stabbed through Long Chen. The poison on it caused his body to turn numb, with half of it no longer listening to his commands. At the same time, the energy within the sword was about to erupt within his body. If it did, Long Chen wouldn't have a corpse left. These two were extremely terrifying assassins. Their cooperation made it so Long Chen had no way to release his full power. With this sword stabbing through his body, Long Chen had already lost half his life. Die! Just as the assassin's power was about to erupt out of his sword, he felt a burst of pain on his forehead. At some unknown point, Long Chen had managed to press his blood-red saber against his forehead. Long Chen's current expression was frighteningly calm. He was completely ignoring the sword stabbing through him to kill this person in a suicidal move. The assassin sneered and moved back. He appeared tens of meters away in an instant, surprisingly giving up on killing Long Chen. However, just as he retreated, another sword stabbed toward Long Chen's back. There wasn't the slightest opening between one sword retreating and one sword attacking. There was no chance to dodge. But just as that sword was about to pierce Long Chen's body, a dragon's roar filled the air and a lightning dragon appeared suddenly, sending that person flying. Long Chen stood on the lightning dragon's head, flying into the air. The two of them were stunned at not having killed Long Chen with their combination attack. "Although I look down on your Bloodkill Hall, I have to admit you really surprise me," said Long Chen indifferently as he looked at his injury. "Long Chen, you also surprise us. The two of us have never failed to assassinate a target together before," said one of them. He slowly took off his hat, and the other one mimicked him. Their movements were the exact same. So that's what it was. Twin brothers with hearts connected, you allow one person to absorb the other's killing intent so that it can't be sensed. As a result, your attack truly can't be blocked. "Amazing," praised Long Chen, resting Blood Drinker on his shoulder. Although he despised the Bloodkill Hall style, he had to admit these twins were terrifying. They had almost killed him. That wasn't because he had been careless. His divine sense had been active at all times, and he had been circulating the 9-star Hegemon body art, but he still hadn't sensed the two of them. That was their true shocking ability. However, this kind of ability could not be replicated. When one person attacked, the other absorbed their killing intent, making it so even the 9-star Hegemon body art hadn't been able to sense the attack. That truly was worthy of Long Chen's praise. "It seems that since you didn't immediately flee, you're confident in a head-on battle? Then before that battle, can you tell me your numbers?" asked Long Chen. The two of them extended their arms at the same time, revealing 2 numbers. Those 2 numbers were 10. In other words, both these assassins were Bloodkill 10. "Originally, we were a bit displeased when we received the order to kill you. We've never killed people with lower cultivation bases than us. But fortunately, you didn't disappoint us. Otherwise, even if we killed you, it would be an unremovable stain on our lives, said one of them. Long Chen was truly shocked to learn that despite their terrifying assassination arts, they were only ranked 10th. Did the Bloodkill Hall really possess such a powerful foundation? But hearing their arrogance, he sneered. Stain? Are you joking? You shameless, despicable assassins care about stains? To kill people, you'll use any means necessary. For profit, you'll even kill your father, mother, and wife. You'll casually use such despicable means, so are you trying to make me laugh to death? You don't comprehend. That is the art of killing. Only relying on brute force to fight has no suspense. Without adding some skill and tension into it, it's a blasphemy to killing, said that person coldly. I can't be bothered to talk with such brainless idiots. Let me ask you, once I kill you, what kind of assassins will the Bloodkill Hall send after me? Rank 8 Celestials? Asked Long Chen. If you can kill us, it will be rank 9 Celestials coming after you, because we are already rank 8 Celestials. Both of their hidden auras began to slowly rise. Heavenly Tao energy started to fill the air with horrifying pressure. We are ranked 10th, while the one ranked 9th is already a rank 9 Celestial. In other words, the two of us are the strongest assassins below rank 9 Celestials. But you don't need to worry, because first of all, they aren't within this region, so you won't run into them, and second, you will die to the two of us, so you don't need to worry about other assassins. In their eyes, Long Chen was already a turtle trapped in a jar. They weren't the slightest bit nervous. This confidence of theirs came from the countless souls that had died beneath their blades. Then let's see. Show me the amazing arts of your Bloodkill Hall. Divine Ring. 4-star battle armor. Green Dragon battle armor. Long Chen's divine ring revolved behind him, for stars appeared in his eyes, and green scales covered his body. Berserk energy shook the 9 heavens. Both of their hearts shook. Although they had read the reports that Long Chen's cultivation base was extremely domineering and would bring his power to an extremely terrifying level, they still hadn't expected his power to have reached this level. Not daring to tarry, the manifestations of rank 8 Celestials erupted, and surprisingly 2 blood-colored runes appeared on their foreheads. These blood-colored runes linked up with their manifestations. The manifestation of a rank 8 Celestial was already terrifying enough, but now their manifestations began to rumble and emit even greater power. Boom! Long Chen's saber clashed with their swords. What shocked Long Chen was that even in terms of power, he was unable to find any advantage over them. Now he understood that the change in their manifestations allowed them to unleash a power that far surpassed ordinary rank 8 Celestials. Long Chen, you'll definitely die today. One of them stamped on the air and transformed into a shadow, shooting toward Long Chen, his sword slashing at him. Boom! Long Chen was shocked to find that the power behind the sword was so great that it sent him flying, and he almost coughed up blood. His arm was now a bit numb. Looking at his shock, that person indifferently said, "The two of us can not only link up our minds, but even our heavenly Tao manifestations. When he's not attacking, I can use his heavenly Tao energy, and when I'm not attacking, he can use mine. Tell me, how are you supposed to fight against us? Just die in peace. Those who blaspheme the killing god must receive the killing god's punishment." This was Long Chen's first time hearing about such terrifying combination arts. However, such people were far too rare. Even twins wouldn't necessarily be able to connect their minds, and even if they did, could they both be such powerful geniuses? Blood Drinker danced in the air, and Long Chen's immortal platforms were all activated, giving him endless energy. That feeling of his power being too much for his body once more appeared, and a sour, numb feeling appeared. That was a sign that if he continued using the power of his immortal platforms, his body would collapse. Long Chen grumbled inside. 80% of his power was the limit. Any more and it would cause the opposite effect. If he used any more power, he would also be injured by it. He would end up taking more damage than his opponent, and not only would that waste the life energy in the primal chaos space, but it would also expose his weakness. The main problem was that their attacks were absolutely seamless. He didn't have any chance to unleash any big moves. Let alone Star Fall or the fourth form of Split the Heavens, he wasn't even able to unleash the third form of Split the Heavens, and the time it took him to use it was basically zero. Although the casting time had been reduced as much as possible, in front of these terrifying assassins with immense experience, all his big moves were interrupted, forcing him to constantly retreat. If it was a 1-against-1, Long Chen would have many ways to pull the distance apart and unleash one of his powerful moves. But in this 2-against-1, he had zero opportunity. It was the opposite. With 2 of their powerful rank 8 celestial manifestations supporting one person at a time, he was at an immense disadvantage. The 2 of them could unleash their powerful moves at will, while Long Chen could only use simple moves to block. It was far too sullen, but also something he was helpless about. Furthermore, Long Chen was infuriated by their irritating mouths. They were constantly saying some badass words. In truth, that was also a tactic. By angering a person and disrupting their mind, it would be easier for them to reveal a fatal opening. Long Chen, don't struggle so uselessly. There's no way for you to escape today, said one of them as his sword fell. Both their manifestations gave him power. It was basically cheating. Fuck off. Long Chen's boots suddenly began to shine, and with a single step, he disappeared from that person's sight. He merely saw a figure shooting toward his twin. Careful, he's going over to you. That person hastily dispersed his heavenly Tao energy for his twin to use. Watch out. He had only just done that when he heard his brother's warning. Blood splashed as that person's waist was cut through. Just now, Long Chen had activated the king item fur boots on his feet, pushing his speed to his peak in an instant. But he hadn't charged at the other assassin, just simply flown into the air. The figure this person had seen was just some robes Long Chen had thrown out. Because he had gone too fast, he had merely seen a figure moving and hadn't been able to tell it was just clothing. Once he was duped, Long Chen appeared behind him, cutting him in half. Originally, Long Chen had thought this would be able to kill him. But as his saber had cut through him, the heavenly Tao energy he had scattered now returned, and it blocked the majority of Long Chen's power. As a result, he only managed to cut him in half without completely destroying him. Before Long Chen could attack again, the other assassin's sword slashed down. Space began to crazily twist with his attack, and he was clearly intent on forcing Long Chen to block him in order to give his twin some breathing room. Long Chen snorted and raised his left hand. It began to shine and directly met his sword. At the same time, Blood Drinker slashed toward the other assassin who had just reconnected his body. What? When Long Chen blocked with his arm guard, he suddenly sensed a gentle energy forcing his body to the side. He couldn't help being shocked. The Bloodkill Hall's experts were truly amazing. In the instant the sword struck his arm protector, the assassin changed his move, going from a direct, fierce hack to an absorptive move, causing his saber to deviate from its original path. As a result, the assassin Long Chen was attacking was merely sent flying. He wildly vomited blood, his body covered in cracks. Long Chen sighed with regret. He had just been the slightest bit off from killing him. Bloodkill life-ending slash. The other assassin was shocked. Just now, his twin had almost been killed. He had never thought Long Chen would be able to fight back this well. In his fury, his sword suddenly exploded with light. Split the heavens 4. But using this kind of ultimate move also gave Long Chen time for his own move. Without even thinking about it, he directly used the fourth form of Split the Heavens. A huge saber image tore into the air, looking like it could cut through the river of stars. Boom! Their attacks smashed together. After this long of an intense fight, this was the first clash of their ultimate moves. The ground exploded and chi waves raged. Both of them vomited a mouthful of blood. As for the other assassin, although he had already fled quite far, he was still struck by the chi waves and blown into the air, wildly vomiting blood. He fainted. Long Chen was covered in blood now, and he blessed his luck that he had only used 1/10 of his immortal platforms to unleash the fourth form of Split the Heavens. If he had used a fourth like he had been doing before, he would definitely be heavily injured, if not dead. He was panting slightly after this intense battle. He had used up a great deal of his spiritual yuan, and their practically cheating cooperation arts had been extremely irritating to fight against. He had wasted a great deal of spiritual yuan to handle their fighting style. Long Chen stamped on the ground, chasing after them. Right now, the Bloodkill Hall's assassin was carrying his unconscious twin and preparing to run. But how could Long Chen give up this chance to kill them? However, he had only taken a couple of steps when his expression changed. The fur boots on his feet lit up, and he turned and fled. Long Chen had no choice but to run. He sensed 3 extremely terrifying auras rushing straight over here. Those 3 auras were different from the auras of ordinary cultivators. They possessed an ancient bloodline power, the specific aura of the ancient races. They had to be top geniuses of the ancient races. For the Bloodkill Hall's experts and the ancient races' experts to appear at the same time, there was no chance of it being a coincidence. One of the 4 nations had definitely brought them. And it was very likely that these people had entered solely to kill him. So without even thinking about it, Long Chen ran. The fur boots on his feet lit up, and he crossed a dozen miles in a single step. He disappeared in an instant. He had only just disappeared when 3 experts arrived. Their leader was the eagle-eyed expert. At this time, he had a huge pair of wings extended on his back, and he looked like a human-shaped bird. He started to chase after Long Chen, but he stopped, his expression sinking. "We're too late, he's already gone." "What a waste. If we had gotten here just 1 step sooner, he'd never have been able to run," said one of them, a large man with 2 long tusks protruding out of his mouth. His voice was very deep, and it rumbled through the air powerfully. Those 2 tusks didn't bend inwards, but upwards, like elephant tusks. In truth, this ancient race expert was a descendant of the human race and an ancient elephant race. He was born with innately great power. The other one didn't speak. His mouth was quite frightening. He had fangs and fur, and was a member of a tiger race. Adding on the eagle-eyed expert, the ancient races had sent out 3 races' top junior disciples to kill Long Chen this time. The ancient races had the pride of the ancient races. They needed to use disciples in the same realm to kill Long Chen, or they would be mocked. The 3 of them were all rank 8 celestials, and they had extremely powerful bloodlines which allowed them to inherit divine arts. According to the ancient race's estimate, any one of them would be enough to kill Long Chen. But to be sure, they had still sent 3 of them, as well as a dozen rank 7 celestials. The reason they had sent so many people was because they wanted to kill Long Chen before the Bloodkill Hall could get to him. If Long Chen was killed by the Bloodkill Hall, he would become a stain on the ancient race's pride that they would never be able to wash away. Having sensed the battle, the 3 of them had rushed over. The eagle-eyed expert was the fastest, but he had still been 1 step too late. He wanted to chase, but he had already lost Long Chen's tracks. He couldn't sense which direction he had gone, so he was filled with fury. He had just been a bit away from being able to report a successfully accomplished mission. But just that little bit allowed Long Chen to escape. The 3 of them looked at each other, and one of them sneered, "The acclaimed, unrivaled assassins who can kill anyone below rank 9 celestials ended up like this? The Bloodkill Hall really knows how to brag." "What do you think you're doing?" demanded the Bloodkill Hall's assassin. "What am I doing? Before entering, your bragging was capable of shaking the heavens. Didn't you say that as long as you saw Long Chen, there would be no chance of him escaping, and so you refused to exchange communication devices with us? But instead, you were almost killed by Long Chen. Is the intelligence of the Bloodkill Hall's disciples so low? You don't even understand what I'm saying?" sneered the ancient race expert. In truth, before entering this world, the Pill Tower's experts had told everyone to keep a communication device in case they noticed Long Chen and weren't sure they could kill him. They could release a signal in secret if they found him, and then everyone could gather to kill him. But the Bloodkill Hall's experts were extremely prideful, and they were not in the habit of working together with others. Their arrogance had dissatisfied the ancient race's experts, and they had almost started fighting right there. So now seeing the Bloodkill Hall's experts in such a miserable state, if they didn't throw some stones at them while they were down, the ancient race's experts would feel like they were letting them down, considering their braggart words back then. You have no qualifications to mock us. At least we managed to find Long Chen and exchange blows with him. But you weren't even able to touch a single strand of Long Chen's hair. You saw his shadow, but so what? The giant eagle race claimed to be unrivaled in speed was unable to even catch him, but has the face to mock others? Sneered the Bloodkill Hall's assassin. Shameful things, you're asking for it? The elephant race expert roared, and his aura exploded, giving off a berserk pressure. The two assassins' expressions sank. As the reapers who moved in the dark, their greatest taboo was when people called them shameful. Human-beast hybrids, you're the ones asking for it. Kill them. The assassins' cursing infuriated the three ancient race experts, and the eagle-eyed expert took the lead in attacking. But the two assassins ended up using some unknown movement ability to escape their blockade in an instant. When they saw them again, they were already 100 miles away, disappearing in just a few blinks. Let's chase and cut them down, roared the elephant race expert. Being called human-beast hybrids was an insult to all the ancient races. It was a blasphemy to their ancestors. But the giant eagle race expert stopped them. We'll handle the two of them later. Those shameful pieces of trash, they are skilled in running, and our chances of catching up to them are basically zero. Don't waste time on them. In truth, the two of them are very powerful, and the fact that Long Chen was able to injure them like this means we can't be careless. Split up and search for him, and warn the other disciples to keep their signals ready. Our mission is to kill Long Chen before the Bloodkill Hall. The two of them nodded, and the three of them split up in search of Long Chen. Long Chen fled as quickly as possible, sighing regretfully. These two fur boots had truly helped him out. They had the ability of contracting the land between his steps, increasing his speed. He traveled through the air easily, and his close-range fighting ability would become even stronger as well. Fuck, those two twin assassins are way too ridiculous. Both of them are rank 8 Celestials? How the hell did that manage to happen? Long Chen was speechless inside. If he had been fighting just one of them, he wouldn't be afraid. Even without using the arm protector or the boots, he'd be able to kill them. But when the two worked together, their combat abilities multiplied, and their seamless cooperation and crafty tricks were very difficult to deal with. They had made his movements a mess, and if he hadn't used the arm protector and boots to heavily injure one, he wouldn't have even had a chance to use the fourth form of Split the Heavens. Most disheartening of all, despite using those two hidden treasures, he still hadn't been able to kill them. Furthermore, he could vaguely sense that the two of them still had many trump cards that they hadn't used. He only had this one chance to cut them down, but he hadn't succeeded. Next time, they definitely wouldn't give him such a good opportunity. In their first fight, those assassins had completely suppressed him. Now that they had experience in fighting him and had forced out his trump cards, it would be even more dangerous. As for those three auras that had appeared at the end, they had also been extremely terrifying. Their auras had caused his scalp to turn numb. That meant they had the power to push him to the brink of death. Long Chen was now sure that he was being targeted within the Four Nations' ancient remnant. Someone had set up a death trap for him. These people were different from Li Wanji or Xia Yuluo. They were true experts, and their cultivation bases were piled up from the lives of countless experts. Although they were both in the late Foundation Forging realm and also rank 8 Celestials, in terms of combat power, these people were many times stronger than Li Wanji. Long Chen's heart felt a bit heavy now. Before he could even think of coming up with a way to handle those twin assassins, another 3 more terrifying ancient race experts arrived. Now there were 5 rank 8 Celestials after him, and he didn't dare to go head-on against them. What worried him the most was a certain bad feeling he had. There was no way the Grand Xia would have let those people in, so they had to have entered from either the Grand Han, Grand Zhou, or Grand Chu. Regardless of which ancient nation they had come from, his main worry was their goal. One nation had brought in enough people to exterminate the elites of all the other 3 ancient nations. If that nation was cooperating with the Bloodkill Hall and ancient races, then their goal was even more worrisome. Long Chen knew that in accordance with the Four Nations Agreement, Each nation was permitted to allow at most one outsider disciple to enter the four nations' ancient remnant. Furthermore, their cultivation base could not surpass the average cultivation base of all the disciples. Long Chen's cultivation base was only at the fourth heaven stage of foundation forging, while the experts that entered the four nations' ancient remnant were at least at the eighth heaven stage of foundation forging. Over half were at the ninth heaven stage, and a portion of those people had reached the peak of that realm. So the Grand Xia hadn't broken the terms by doing this, but others had clearly gone against their treaty, making Long Chen feel a sense of dread. He hoped he hadn't brought the Grand Xia trouble. Long Chen was rushing away quickly in hopes of finding a good place to rest when Huolong suddenly gave him a warning of danger. Heaven and earth suddenly shook as flames filled the air. Everything within thousands of miles was locked down by flame chains. Long Chen instantly became a fish caught in a net. These countless flame chains had appeared without any warning, sealing all of heaven and earth. Long Chen had instantly stopped upon sensing the danger, but he was already trapped. This had happened far too suddenly, as if it had been set up perfectly right for him. But Long Chen hadn't sensed the slightest danger. Long Chen was extremely confident in the 9-star Hegemon body art. Other than those twin assassins who were able to absorb each other's killing intent, any evil intentions toward him would be sensed. But something like the twin assassins was far too rare. Long Chen quickly came up with a hypothesis that perhaps the 9-star Hegemon body art was only most sensitive to killing intent. Perhaps because his opponent didn't want to kill him, they had managed to elude the 9-star Hegemon body art senses. As for Huolong, by the time it sensed the danger, it was too late. Violet flames had filled the world around him, and there was nowhere to run. A flame appeared in the air, condensing into an extremely young, long-haired man. His complexion was fair, and his eyes were electric. Violet flame runes were leaping in his eyes. Long Chen sensed extremely terrifying energy coming from him. Just at this moment, Huolong began to grow agitated. It told him that this man controlled an incredibly powerful earth flame. Earth flames had sharp senses toward each other, as well as an innate hostility. They all devoured each other to grow. But what shocked Long Chen was that Huolong was afraid of this violet flame. In other words, this flame had surpassed the realm that Huolong could handle. Long Chen, I didn't expect you to fall into my hands. The man in violet flames looked at Long Chen with a faint smile. He was standing in the air, looking at him as if he was prey that was stuck in a trap and had nowhere to go. He was the hunter, in complete control. You are from the Pill Tower? Asked Long Chen. Long Chen sensed the specific aura and spiritual fluctuations of an alchemist. There was no doubt that this person was an alchemist, and for him to be so young and possess such a cultivation base already, as well as such a terrifying earth flame, he had to be from the Pill Tower. My name is Dan Chu. The man indifferently looked at Long Chen, not exactly answering his question. Long Chen's pupils shrank slightly. He suddenly recalled that he had heard this name before. The one claimed to be the 7-star tower's #1 alchemist genius is you? The 7-star tower was one of the Central Plains 9 pill towers. They went from the 1-star tower to the 9-star tower. The Central Plains was just too huge, and there needed to be 9 pill towers spread throughout its territory. Each one of them was in charge of one area. The 9 pill towers rarely had any dealings with each other because they were so far apart. They all simply followed Pill Valley's instructions. As for the 7-star tower, it was located in the eastern region of the Central Plains. It had countless experts of the Pill Dao, and they were in charge of the medicinal pill supply within this region. During his interactions with the Xiantian Dao Sect's Alchemy Pavilion, he had heard Dan Chu's name. He was the 7-star tower's top genius, with unrivaled pill arts and terrifying combat powers. Since you know my name, there's no need for me to do anything. Allow yourself to be captured. There's no point in struggling, said Dan Chu coldly, his hands clasped behind his back. Originally, with my status, capturing you like this isn't even a win for me. But my time is precious, and I don't have time for you to recover. Allowing yourself to be captured is your only option. The flames around Dan Chu were constantly leaping, making him look like a flame god looking down on Long Chen. Haha. Long Chen couldn't help but laugh as if he had heard the funniest joke in the world. If these words came from those two assassins or the three idiots of the ancient races, perhaps I'd be able to accept them. But from you? Perhaps you might not believe me when I say this, but I happen to be the true ancestor of you children playing with fire. Right now, Long Chen's spiritual yuan had been exhausted. Any other rank 8 celestial might have the power to kill him. But only this person was an exception. Contemptible little brat, be suppressed. Dan Chu's expression sank. As an alchemy genius and a possessor of a terrifying earth flame, he had never encountered someone who was a match for him in the same realm, whether it was in the Pill Dao or Martial Dao. Long Chen's shameless boast as the ancestor of playing with fire was the greatest disrespect to the entire Pill Dao. Dan Chu waved his hand, and flame runes fell from the sky like a river of stars, enveloping Long Chen. Right now, the entire world was filled with flames. As Dan Chu attacked, the chains didn't show the slightest sign of weakening or budging. This was to prevent Long Chen from escaping. Long Chen formed hand seals, forming a flame barrier around himself that blocked these violet flames. But Long Chen's expression quickly changed. He found these violet flames were capable of burning anything. They were even starting to incinerate his flames. My soul-devouring violet flame is ranked 36th on the Earth Flame rankings. As for your Earth Flame, it probably can't even enter the top 50. Just what are you supposed to take out to fight me? Sneered Dan Chu. In his eyes, Long Chen's struggle was like a bug trying to stop a carriage. Long Chen's spiritual yuan was low right now, and this would only cause his spiritual yuan to run out faster. Don't try to use your own little experience to judge other people's strength. That will only show how stupid you are, sneered Long Chen, feigning calm. But his voice was clearly lacking confidence. He was clearly forcing himself, and he was even starting to sweat. His earth flame was fundamentally unable to contend against the soul-devouring violet flame. Within the Xiantian Dao sect, Long Chen had obtained multiple earth flames that Hualong had devoured, allowing it to grow. But it truly was as Dan Chu said, there was no way its power would allow it to enter the top 50 on the earth flame rankings. It probably wouldn't even be able to enter the top 60. The difference between the two was too great. Continuing like this was hopeless for Long Chen. Long Chen, I'll give you one chance. Hand over your treasure that allows you to raise other people's celestial ranks, and I will allow you to become my follower. You'll receive 100 times better treatment than if you stayed in your Xiantian Dao sect, said Dan Chu upon seeing Long Chen bitterly enduring. His spiritual yuan was rapidly running out. Long Chen's heart shook. So others had already set their sights on his treasures. I don't have any such treasure, nor do I have any secrets. All your little schemes were useless. Don't even think about obtaining anything, said Long Chen through clenched teeth. In truth, Long Chen's mind was rapidly working. Just who had exposed this secret? According to reason, the Xian Master had already taken responsibility for the raising of the Dragonblood Legion's celestial ranks. That should make it so people didn't suspect him. And even if there were suspicions, they should only be suspicions. But Dan Chu's tone showed that he was completely sure of this. That puzzled Long Chen. That was why Long Chen was being ambiguous. With his last sentence, he even ended up contradicting himself. You refuse to admit it? Xian Jizi assured the Tower Master with his own head that you have some kind of amazing treasure. If you hand it over right now, it won't be too late. My promise to you will still hold. As Dan Chu said this, he sent more violet flames to wrap around Long Chen, not giving him any breathing room. He rapidly exhausted Long Chen's spiritual yuan, not giving him time to think, forcing him to make a decision. Long Chen immediately understood. So it was that bastard Xian Jizi. It was this fellow's scheming that had incited the Pill Tower to target him. Thinking of this, he also realized that everything happening within the Four Nations' ancient remnant would also be under the control of the Pill Tower. Without the Pill Tower's support, the Grand Han definitely wouldn't have had the guts to so publicly break the treaty between the Four Nations. Now they had Pill Valley's support and were working together with the Bloodkill Hall and the ancient races. He had long since heard that amongst the Four Nations, the Grand Xia had the worst relationship with the Pill Tower. The biggest reason for this was the Wine God Palace. As for the nation with the best relationship with Pill Tower, it would have to be the Grand Han. Then, based on various indications that the Grand Han had run into a wall with the Wine God Palace and had to entirely throw themselves to the Pill Tower, everything logically fell into place. Seeing Long Chen was still bitterly enduring, Dan Chu was a bit shocked. Long Chen's tenacity was greater than he had imagined. Even after this long, he was still enduring. Your struggle has no meaning. I don't mind telling you that this time, the Grand Han is preparing to devour the elites of all the other three nations. With Xian Jizi's help, the other three nations' elites have lost their connection to their dragon veins. In other words, the Grand Xia, Grand Zhou, and Grand Chu's princes will be unable to draw out their dragon vein energy to support themselves in battle, making them much weaker than normal. Perhaps they've already died to the Grand Han's experts. No one will come to save you, said Dan Chu indifferently. This was a mental tactic. He hoped to use this to break Long Chen's defenses and have him hand over his treasures and secrets. People were all greedy. Dan Chu hoped to get Long Chen's treasures and secrets for himself. If he could, he didn't want to give them to the Tower Master, Dan Teng. Is the Grand Han not afraid of the other three nations learning the truth and joining hands to destroy them? Asked Long Chen coldly. Learning the truth? Once they're killed, due to the lost connection with their dragon veins, not even their emperors will know who did it. The truth is, some mysterious life forms appeared in the four nations' ancient remnant this time, and they slaughtered the four nations' experts. 3 of those nations' elites were all killed, while the Grand Han also took heavy losses, with only a few imperial disciples managing to escape. What do you think about this truth? Sneered Dan Chu. So what you're saying is that once this truth is announced, when the Grand Xia, Grand Zhou, and Grand Chu target the Grand Han, your Pill Tower will come to stand behind the Grand Han? Demanded Long Chen. But of course, the truth needs to be defended by others. The Grand Han will have my Pill Tower's support, as well as the ancient race's protection. And if the 3 nations refuse to behave, the Bloodkill Hall will pay them a bit of special attention. Tell me, what kind of waves could the 3 nations possibly cause? Dan Chu's voice was completely indifferent, but his words caused Long Chen's killing intent to rise. The cultivation world was just that shameless. As long as you were strong enough, you didn't need to have any misgivings about whatever you did. The truth could be changed at any time to suit your needs. As for whether other people believed it or not, it didn't matter. Either they had to agree that it was true, or you would kill them. This was an extremely bald-faced scheme without any skill or substance. But they also didn't need such a thing. In fact, the simpler it was, the better. A while ago, Long Chen had even asked the Xian Master why the Central Plains experts didn't use their heads. And the Xian Master had clearly replied that experts didn't need to use their heads. That was too troublesome. All they needed was enough power. Now, the Grand Han was a perfect example. With a powerful backer, they didn't need a marvelous scheme, nor were they afraid of others knowing the truth. That was because everyone had to believe their truth, the truth of the Pill Tower. Those who didn't believe would have killers come to their doors. The cultivation world was simply this shameless, this roguish. Do you really think your Pill Tower can be so overbearing and conceal the truth from the masses? Demanded Long Chen, his killing intent spreading. He knew that Xia Yunchong and Xia Yuluo were in danger right at this moment. No one could have predicted that the Grand Han would have such crazy ambitions of borrowing the strength of other powers to devour the other 3 nations. This danger had come far too suddenly and without any premonitions. Correct. My Pill Tower is the heavens in this region, and Pill Valley is the heavens of the entire Martial Heaven continent. As for you people, you are just ants who can only rely on us to live. If we want you to die, you'll have to obediently wait for your death. Sometimes being dumb is another kind of intelligence. As for those idiots who like to think of themselves as smart, their deaths are always the most miserable. I don't mind telling you this. Even once the Grand Xia, Grand Chu, and Grand Zhou's elites are all killed, there won't be any war. First, let's ignore the pressure of Pill Valley, the assistance of the ancient races, and the threat of the Bloodkill Hall. The hypocritical, sanctimonious people of the three nations won't truly start a war. They don't want their citizens to be drawn into it, because in any war, whether you win or lose, it's always the common citizens that have the highest casualties. The Grand Xia, Grand Chu, and Grand Zhou care too much about those ants' lives. On the other hand, the Grand Han knows that battle is just this cruel. The goal of a battle is to win more resources. So the Grand Han dared to do this. That's why it's fated that the Grand Xia, Grand Chu, and Grand Zhou that have lost a third of their dragon veins' karmic luck are doomed to decline. They don't dare to fight due to their own soft-heartedness. Furthermore, they're afraid of other sects participating, so their decline is set in stone. As for the Grand Han, they'll have devoured the three nations' karmic luck, eventually dominating all four nations. There's no suspense at all. So do you understand now? Not only is it impossible for you to escape, but the Grand Xia, Grand Chu, and Grand Zhou have no chance either. Submitting to me now is your only chance of survival. Not only will I let you live, but I'll also let you live grandly. Abandon your meaningless struggle. Dan Chu looked at Long Chen confidently, seeming omnipotent in his current state. Anyone would feel a sense of powerlessness if their positions were switched with Long Chen. But Dan Chu had no idea that Long Chen was recording everything he was saying with a photographic jade in the primal chaos space. His eyes were the windows to the photographic jade. Everything he saw, everything he heard, it was all stealthily recorded. Dan Chu was fundamentally unable to sense it. Right now, he was saying all this to make Long Chen submit to him. He wanted to take Long Chen's treasures for himself. Although he could win against Long Chen, he might lose out on his treasures. If he pushed Long Chen too far and gave him no hope, Long Chen might destroy his secrets and kill himself. So he was not only breaking Long Chen's hope step by step and fracturing his Tao heart, but he was also giving him enticement. After all, he came from the Pill Tower. In his eyes, the Pill Tower was a supreme existence, while others were ants. He thought anyone would treat joining the Pill Tower as the glory of a lifetime. But Dan Chu gradually became more and more shocked. Long Chen's spiritual yuan was clearly growing weaker and weaker, but he was unable to exhaust that final little bit that Long Chen had left. Once Long Chen had no more spiritual yuan, he would be Dan Chu's prisoner and could be taken away. Right now, he didn't dare to suddenly unleash his full power. He wanted Long Chen to completely exhaust himself to the point that he didn't even have the power to kill himself. Long Chen, as long as you swear your loyalty to me, I definitely won't kill you. Following me will be your life's glory. It'll be 100 times better than whatever life the Shintian Dao sect can give you. Right now, Long Chen had descended into silence, delighting Dan Chu. Although he made his voice sound grave, he couldn't conceal all his excitement. He thought Long Chen's confidence was starting to be rattled. So he directly gave him his promise. But in truth, this promise was no different than a fart. So what if he swore he wouldn't kill Long Chen? This was a con that could not be more overused. Couldn't he just tell someone else to kill Long Chen and that wouldn't be breaking his promise? Long Chen stared at Dan Chu without saying a word, seeming to be hesitating but unable to make a decision. No problem. You can slowly consider it. I'll give you enough time, said Dan Chu. Long Chen's expression didn't change, but he was delighted inside. Enough time? Good, those were exactly the words he had been waiting to hear. Dan Chu's cultivation base was at the 9th heaven stage of foundation forging. He was a rank 8 celestial and in control of the 36th ranked earth flame. However, Dan Chu would never have imagined that there would be someone capable of controlling fire to the point that they would not only be able to resist his flames, but would even be able to extract his spiritual yuan from those flames without him even sensing it. With his pill sovereign memories, when it came to controlling flames, Long Chen could be rated as unrivaled beneath the heavens. Furthermore, Hua Long could cooperate perfectly with him. As Long Chen stealthily extracted Dan Chu's spiritual yuan, Hua Long also devoured the energy of this flame. Using a special technique, Long Chen put on the illusion that he was getting exhausted, but was actually absorbing all of Dan Chu's spiritual yuan to make up for his exhausted spiritual yuan. Seeing Long Chen seem to be considering his promise, Dan Chu became even more confident. For him, the worst case had been Long Chen going crazy. But now this method of slowly boiling the frog was being very effective. The two of them didn't speak for a while. Dan Chu's expression was calm, while Long Chen's was a bit nervous. Sweat began to drip from his head. An hour later, Long Chen's body was starting to quiver. After 2 hours, the quivering became more intense. Life was like a play that required acting skills. Long Chen was now ashen, covered in sweat. But his gaze was complicated, as if he was caught between two difficult options. It was like he was trying to decide the hardest thing in his life. Dan Chu was starting to smile. He continued to use his spiritual yuan to control his flames and surround Long Chen. From the start, he had been maintaining the same output. He could sense that victory was in sight. These 2 hours had been extremely important. It was like refining pills. He couldn't be impatient and had to be calm and steady. As an alchemist, Dan Chu was deeply aware of this principle. 2 hours. 4 hours. 6 hours. When the 6th hour passed, Dan Chu finally felt that something was wrong. He was shocked to find that he had unconsciously used up 30% of his spiritual yuan, while Long Chen still looked like he was on the verge of breaking. His sense of alarm finally rang. "Bastard, you dare to con me?" Dan Chu tested his suspicions by gradually increasing his output. Finding that Long Chen didn't react much, he knew he had been duped. The flames that filled the world suddenly shot at Long Chen. Flame chains tried to bind him. "Ha, it's too late," laughed Long Chen. His spiritual yuan had recovered by 20%, filling him with confidence. A huge flame dragon appeared. It was Huolong. But Huolong was different from before. Its original blood color had now turned violet. It was emitting greater power than ever before. Because of Dan Chu's overconfidence and his greed for Long Chen's treasures and secrets, he hadn't noticed his own spiritual yuan or flame energy had dropped a great deal. Now that he sensed it, he realized Long Chen's flame dragon had already grown much stronger. Furthermore, it was releasing violet flames. It opened its mouth and actually devoured the flame chains coming toward it. "Bastard, you damn bastard!" Dan Chu's expression changed. He sensed his earth flame energy being devoured by Huolong in that instant. Forming hand seals, a huge violet sword appeared behind Dan Chu. Heaven and earth shook as a terrifying pressure crashed down. This was a terrifying attack. If it struck Huolong, it would very likely collapse and have its core injured. Although Huolong had devoured quite a bit of the soul-devouring violet flame, the power difference between them had been too great. Right now, it would be not bad for Huolong's power to be able to enter the top 50 of the Earth Flame rankings. If it was struck, the consequences would be terrible. Pow! Just as Dan Chu was forming hand seals and about to unleash this terrifying attack, the boots on Long Chen's feet lit up, and with a single step, he appeared in front of Dan Chu, slapping him across the face. Dan Chu didn't notice any danger. He merely sensed his vision darken for an instant before he felt his face become numb and he was sent flying. Originally, Long Chen had thought that perhaps this blow would be able to kill Dan Chu. Although he hadn't had any killing intent behind it or stored up any power, considering his current strength, a physically weak alchemist should still not be able to bear it. But just as his palm had been about to land on Dan Chu's face, countless flame runes had appeared around it, blocking 90% of his force. However, it didn't stop his palm from sending Dan Chu flying. The forming of his sword was interrupted and it collapsed. Huolong had already flown out. The huge sword collapsed into flame runes once it was interrupted by Long Chen, and Huolong devoured them all. Dan Chu was shocked and infuriated at being slapped. Just now, he had felt Long Chen's slap to be far too strange. There hadn't been the slightest omen before he had been struck. If it hadn't been for his pill flame automatically protecting him, his head would have exploded. Just at this moment, a blood-colored saber image soared into the clouds, cutting through heaven and earth. Bringing with it an air of death, it slashed toward Dan Chu. The saber image was like blood cutting through the air. A sensation of death caused all of Dan Chu's hair to stand on end. Raging flame heaven-raising shield, roared Dan Chu, a violet flame shield condensing before him. Boom! A heaven-shaking explosion erupted, and flame waves spread in every direction. Long Chen was actually sent flying. Long Chen was shocked. What terrifying flame energy, what a powerful flame magical art, and what refined control. There were rapid fluctuations coming from the shield that had caused him to rebound. Be suppressed. Dan Chu's expression was dark. Upon forming hand seals, the surrounding flame prison unleashed countless flame serpents. Those flame serpents shot toward Long Chen, but just as he unleashed this move, Dan Chu's expression changed. In his fury, he had forgotten that Long Chen still had his powerful flame dragon. The huge flame dragon roared and devoured tens of thousands of the flame serpents in one gulp. Those flame serpents were all 3,000 meters long, while the flame dragon was 30,000 meters long. But Hualong had awakened an innate ability, and its mouth was like a black hole, twisting space, allowing it to devour all those flame serpents in one gulp. You really are courting death. Dan Chu's expression sank. He was just about to control the devoured flame serpents to attack the flame dragon from the inside when he suddenly sensed that they had disappeared. At the same time, he was infuriated to find that yet another portion of his flame energy had been consumed. He was unable to sense it. Then when he thought about it, it was completely bizarre that this flame dragon was capable of devouring his energy. Those flame serpents contained his spiritual strength. They should have exploded and destroyed the flame dragon once they were consumed. But once something was devoured by Hualong, Long Chen could instantly draw it into the primal chaos space. And the primal chaos space had never disappointed him. The flame serpents had all of Dan Chu's spiritual strength erased from them when they entered the primal chaos space. Becoming ownerless objects, they were easily devoured by Hualong. But these flames were too powerful, and Hualong was unable to instantly refine them. It returned to Long Chen's arm. Long Chen sensed his spiritual yuan rising once more. Hualong's gulp hadn't just devoured the flame energy, it had also devoured a large amount of spiritual yuan, allowing Long Chen to recover even more. As expected, you have to have some treasure on you. Hand it over. Dan Chu suddenly spread his hands, and a golden spear appeared between them. Shockingly, this golden spear was not a true martial item, but formed of flames. Dan Chu was actually in control of a kind of golden flame as well. The spear pierced toward Long Chen, causing space to release explosive sounds. Heaven and earth shook. Boom! Blood Drinker slashed onto the spear, surprisingly causing a metallic clashing sound. Then space exploded. Bastard, you actually stole my spiritual yuan as well. This attack caused both sides to be blown back. Dan Chu was shocked and infuriated. He sensed his own aura within the spiritual yuan Long Chen was releasing. He was shocked that Long Chen had such a bizarre technique and furious that he had actually been duped. If he had gone all out at the beginning, he'd have easily handled him. But after Long Chen's stalling tactic, a great deal of his spiritual yuan had been stolen. Moreover, after Hualong had devoured his flame serpents, he had 40% of his spiritual yuan stolen by it. For Long Chen to use his own spiritual yuan against him made him want to explode. Thinking of Long Chen's act and how he had fallen for it, he knew Long Chen had to have been laughing at him inside for being an idiot. Die! Dan Chu roared, runes lighting up all over his body. The manifestation of a rank 8 celestial appeared, and raging flames wrapped around him, turning him into a flaming battle god. Divine Ring, Battle Armor, Flame Support. Long Chen also unleashed his power. His divine ring manifested and 4 stars appeared in his eyes. At the same time, flames also wrapped around Long Chen. This was a flame technique he had learned from the Xiantian catalog. When fighting against normal people, it didn't have too much use. But it was a must-have technique for fighting alchemists. Without the protection of his own flames, there was no way to fight in close range without being roasted. Seeing the flames around Long Chen, Dan Chu almost coughed up blood. Those were violet flames that looked almost identical to his own flame. The fluctuations were just somewhat weaker. Long Chen hadn't just stolen his spiritual yuan, he had also stolen the power of his earth flame. Previously, Long Chen's earth flame had been trash in Dan Chu's eyes, but now, it was only somewhat weaker than his. He felt like he was about to go crazy. "You shameless little thief." Dan Chu could no longer remain calm. His expression was twisted in anger. "Idiot, if I'm a little thief, then you're a big thief. What's the difference? You're allowed to forcibly take what's mine, but I can't sneakily take what's yours? Is your head only full of shit?" taunted Long Chen. Although Long Chen was insulting him, inside, he was extremely shocked. This soul-devouring violet flame was truly worthy of being ranked 36th on the Earth Flame rankings. It was incredibly powerful. While this Earth Flame raged, Long Chen could sense it burning at the very heavens. He felt the world's energy being extracted by the flame and converted to his spiritual yuan. With the divine ring and the soul-devouring violet flame's power, he would be able to recover his spiritual yuan at a shocking pace. He estimated that instead of taking several days like before, he would only need a few hours to fully recover. What Long Chen didn't know was that this soul-devouring violet flame was a treasure countless alchemists would long for. Other than just its immense power, it also had an innate ability to devour heaven and earth's energy, allowing alchemists to recover their spiritual yuan and spiritual strength very quickly. With the soul-devouring violet flame, alchemists wouldn't need to worry about running out of spiritual yuan or spiritual strength for alchemy. Furthermore, they wouldn't need to be afraid of a long fight if they had it. "Shameless little thief, die." Dan Chu was growing insane from anger. He was the one most aware of the soul-devouring violet flame's power. Long Chen's almost exhausted spiritual yuan was growing stronger and stronger. This had all been stolen from Dan Chu. Boom. Dan Chu's golden spear smashed toward Long Chen. Violet flames appeared on Blood Drinker as Long Chen slashed it at the spear. Space exploded and wildly twisted. Their weapons were tightly locked against each other. "This is your true core flame? It's not bad." Blocking the golden spear and unleashing all his power, Long Chen could sense a mountain-toppling power coming from it. This golden spear was like real metal, yet also not. It was a kind of flame that had been condensed to the pinnacle. It was extremely strange. This spear seemed to be hiding a volcano. Endless power was pouring out of it. With Long Chen's immense power, to not be able to send an alchemist flying showed that this golden flame was definitely not ordinary. "You despicable little thief, you have no qualification to ask what it is," roared Dan Chu. He suddenly sent a kick at Long Chen's stomach. Flames formed a sharp point on his foot. If struck, Long Chen would be left with a hole in his abdomen. Long Chen sneered. With just a glance, he could tell that this fellow had no combat experience. Just as Dan Chu's foot was about to touch him, he fiercely pushed his saber forward. Originally they were equally matched, but because Dan Chu had sent out a kick, it caused his upper body to lose strength. As a result, Long Chen could push him away, and his kick missed. "Idiot, I admire your courage to fight close range against me." As Dan Chu's foot flew by Long Chen's chest, Long Chen's foot made a graceful arc through the air to land almost perfectly on Dan Chu's exposed crotch. Bang! The sound of something like an egg exploding rang out. Dan Chu shot back like a shooting star. At the same time, he let out a mournful shriek. Slamming into his own prison, an explosive sound rang out. That place was the root of carrying on a cultivator's ancestral line. This place could not be strengthened through cultivation unless you no longer cared about having progeny. Human cultivation allowed one to escape from old age and death, to become a god or immortal. In itself, cultivation was fundamentally a way to change the restrictions of the world. Reproduction was the essence of the human Tao, while cultivation was fundamentally a process of comprehending the heavenly Taos and escaping the human Tao. During this process, the only thing maintained of the human Tao was the root of reproduction. Unless someone felt that they were just on the verge of becoming a god or immortal, they wouldn't abandon that reproductive ability. Doing such a thing would require the courage of cutting off all the paths of retreat. But if they failed in the end, they would never get another son capable of carrying on their inheritance. As for cultivators who didn't become a god or immortal, once they reached their limit, they could continue leaving behind future generations, passing on their own powerful bloodlines. Then their descendants would be essentially standing on their shoulders as they cultivated. Those descendants would have better starting points than others and would reach the peak of the martial path easier. Their accomplishments could surpass their ancestors before they once more passed on their bloodlines. In the end, someone might be able to become a god or immortal. That was why basically all cultivators would keep their reproductive abilities in contrast to their cultivation, which was why that spot was a fatal weak point for almost all male cultivators. This kick caused Dan Chu to lose the chicken and lose his eggs. Even his pubic bone was almost broken by this kick. Without his pill flame protecting himself, he would have exploded from the impact. Long Chun couldn't help being shocked that he hadn't killed him. Just now, he had even used his king item boots. But then seeing Dan Chu's broken robes had exposed a golden soft armor on his body, he suddenly realized that he wasn't the only one who possessed special king items. Without giving him any time to breathe, Long Chun shot after Dan Chu. This is an expression, literally meaning the chicken flies away and the eggs are broken. It means to lose everything. But in this case, the eggs are his testicles, and the chicken is his penis, as it's slang for penis. Raging flame barrier. Dan Chu roared furiously. His voice was hoarse and cracked now. Countless flame runes shot over from the surrounding prison. In truth, the majority of Dan Chu's power was condensed within this huge flame prison, as he was afraid of Long Chen using some secret technique to run away. But now, he had no choice but to draw out the power he had used in the prison. 3 slashes of Long Chen's saber were consecutively blocked by the flame barrier. As for Dan Chu, he was holding his crotch, constantly rolling on the ground and wailing. The pain made it so he couldn't focus on the battle. If it hadn't been for the prison he had set up in advance, he would have already died. His life rod had been destroyed. That pain was unimaginable, even though he was using Heavenly Tao energy to heal it. Heavenly Tao energy had a very limited effect on recovering the root of the human Tao. At this time, Dan Chu could only use the flame barrier to stall for some time while he suppressed the pain. Then he would be able to continue fighting. Hearing that Long Chen's strikes were continuously blocked by his defenses, Dan Chu relaxed. He hastily swallowed a medicinal pill to suppress the pain. Otherwise, with that intense pain racking his body, let alone fighting, he wouldn't even have the ability to stand. Long Chen, I'll definitely tear you to pieces. Dan Chu was filled with hatred. In all his years, he had never suffered this much. This kick from Long Chen severed his ability to carry on his ancestral line. Even though the pill tower had tens of thousands of amazing medicinal pills that could allow him to regrow it, it would only have the form. Its function would very likely never recover. Long Chen continuously attacked the flame barrier, but he was unable to break it. That made Dan Chu calm down, and he focused on recovering. A minute passed. Dan Chu finally managed to suppress the pain, but his expression suddenly changed. In just this 1 minute, he sensed his prison had weakened a great deal. Long Chen was constantly striking the barrier with Blood Drinker, while Hua Long was coiled around the prison, greedily devouring its energy. The only reason Long Chen was attacking the barrier was to draw Dan Chu's attention so that Hua Long would have more time to devour the flame energy. Hua Long greedily absorbed the flame energy. The violet color of its flames grew deeper, and its aura also grew stronger. Bastard, you're still stealing! Boom! Dan Chu roared, and the prison he had made shook. He was trying to throw off Hua Long, but he suddenly found that in just this 1 minute, Hua Long had grown too strong, while the amount of energy within his prison had shrunk. He was unable to throw it off. Don't be so petty. You have too much flame energy inside you, making your temper bad. It's not good for young people to be so angry all the time. Look at yourself, at how flustered and exasperated you are. That's a clear sign you are holding too many flames inside. That's why I was helping you, saving your life, said Long Chen wickedly upon seeing the crazed Dan Chu. Die! Dan Chu roared, his hair fluttering in the air and flames coiling around him. Heaven and earth shook. The world suddenly became clear. That was because the huge flame prison had disappeared. After reabsorbing the energy within this flame prison, Dan Chu's aura instantly reached his peak. He waved his hand, the golden spear shooting toward Long Chen. Long Chen also called back Hualong. A large amount of spiritual yuan poured into his body. Just now Hualong had not only devoured Dan Chu's flame energy, but it had also taken away a huge amount of his spiritual yuan. Boom! Saber and spear once more collided, unleashing huge flame waves. The world ignited, causing space to twist. Bastard, I will flay the skin from your body and pull out every muscle and bone you have. Now Dan Chu had recalled his flame prison, unleashing a full-power attack. But he was only an even match against Long Chen. That wasn't because Long Chen had grown stronger, but because he had taken so much of Dan Chu's spiritual yuan and flame energy. That made Dan Chu so angry that he felt like he might die. He had clearly been stronger than Long Chen, but because he had been too careful, things had ended up like this. The two of them began an intense battle, flames filling the air. Although Dan Chu was infuriated, due to his previous experience, he no longer dared to fight Long Chen at close range. He unleashed huge spear images that struck at Long Chen from a distance. Long Chen brandished Blood Drinker, defending 70% of the time. He did his best to avoid head-on collisions. With the help of the Divine Ring and soul-devouring Violet Flame, he was recovering energy as he fought. Long Chen's exhausted spiritual yuan had recovered to about a third. As long as he didn't use a big move, his spiritual yuan would only continue recovering. The longer the battle dragged on, the more beneficial it was to him. At this time, Dan Chu's expression changed. He finally realized that if this continued, his situation would only grow worse. His spiritual yuan was also recovering, but it wasn't recovering as fast as Long Chen's. Furthermore, while spiritual yuan could be quickly recovered, there was no way for him to recover the flame energy Long Chen had stolen from him. Bloodline Golden Flame. Dan Chu finally calmed down. Upon clenching his teeth, a circular rune appeared on his forehead. Light began to spin within it until it became a blazing sun. A mass of golden flames burst out of Dan Chu's body. Once the golden flames burst out, his soul-devouring violet flame was like oil being boiled. It unleashed a terrifying pressure that caused space to rumble. Long Chen, did you think that by stealing that little bit of flame energy from me you could match me? Idiot, keep dreaming. I'll show you the true difference between us, the power that trash like you couldn't compare to even if you cultivated for 1,000,000 years. Dan Chu icily glared at the distant Long Chen, floating in the air with golden flames erupting from him. Long Chen was deeply shaken. This golden flame seemed like a king amongst flames. Any other flames would have to lower their heads to it. But for some unknown reason, Long Chen felt a kind of loathing and hatred in the depths of his soul for this golden flame. Dan Chu raised his spear. Golden flames soared out of it, and a terrifying pressure erupted. Whether Long Chen fled to the heavens or to hell, this spear would follow him. This terrifying lock was unavoidable. But Long Chen felt no fear. Green Dragon Battle Armor. A terrifying aura now also soared out of Long Chen. His immortal platforms began to rapidly revolve. Long Chen's skin suddenly exploded and cracks appeared all over him, blood spurting out. His body was unable to bear his own power. Boom! Blood Drinker smashed into Dan Chu's golden spear. Dan Chu coughed up a mouthful of blood, while blood mist exploded out of Long Chen. His physical body couldn't bear the power of his 108,000 immortal platforms. He was completely covered in blood now. But he had still managed to block Dan Chu's full-strength attack. Saber and spear were perfectly matched, with flames destroying the surroundings. This had been a world-shaking collision. Both of them were unleashing their full power, but neither was able to overwhelm the other. Dan Chu's fury became shock. He had never expected Long Chen to have such a terrifying trump card. I'll let you die in peace. Dan Chu's aura changed. Suddenly, endless flames flew toward him from every direction. At the same time, chanting filled the air like the murmuring of gods. Long Chen sneered. The Nirvana scripture? Didn't he know that as well? At the same time as Dan Chu started using the Nirvana scripture, Long Chen started using it as well. Chanting suddenly rang out, chanting that was different from the previous chanting. This chanting was even more majestic, and it clearly rang out in Dan Chu's ears. His expression changed. "How can you know my Pill Valley's Nirvana scripture?" Long Chen ignored him and unleashed the full power of the Nirvana scripture. Heaven and earth shook. The world's flame energy poured toward Long Chen. The flames around him looked like oil that had been tossed inside, and they soared toward the sky. This is impossible." Dan Chu roared furiously. He couldn't believe this. How could Long Chen know Pill Valley's secret art, the Nirvana scripture? The most unbelievable thing was that when Long Chen used the Nirvana scripture, all the flame energy that he had gathered was snatched away by Long Chen. Dan Chu refused to accept this. Long Chen wasn't just snatching heaven and earth's flame energy, he was even taking his core flame. If this continued, let alone fighting Long Chen, all his flame energy would be sucked dry by him. In the end, death would be his only path. Boom! Dan Chu suddenly detonated his golden spear. Long Chen was caught off guard and blown several miles away by its power. Just at this moment, Dan Chu formed a hand seal, and a 3,000-meter cauldron appeared in the air. This cauldron unleashed a terrifying pressure, crushing even heaven and earth. Long Chen's expression completely changed. This cauldron was probably on an even higher level than a king item. Die! Dan Chu seemed crazed. Golden blood was actually pouring out of his eyes, and his face was twisted. The huge cauldron smashed toward Long Chen. Long Chen's hair immediately stood on end. He had a premonition that being struck by this cauldron would spell certain death. Long Chen put away Blood Drinker. His left hand grabbed his right elbow, and a sphere began to condense above his right hand. The sphere was only a foot wide when it first appeared. But as Long Chen poured in flame energy and the energy of his immortal platforms, it suddenly grew to 30 meters. It was like a star had appeared in Long Chen's hand. Facing this terrifying cauldron, Long Chen was unleashing unprecedented power. With his Nirvana scripture pushed to the peak, this sphere was now 10 times larger than it was when Long Chen had used it to attack Han Zhenyu's group of 3 over the Eastern Sea. Star fall. Following Long Chen's shout, the sphere in his hand shot through the air like a shooting star, smashing into the cauldron. Boom! Light exploded. Flame runes and golden runes exploded. Even space collapsed. Long Chen was blown back by the shockwave, his body turned into a bloody pulp. He hastily drank a few mouthfuls of the divine life elixir, fully recovering. But his spiritual yuan had been sucked dry by this one starfall. Looking toward Dan Chu, he saw that he wasn't any better off than him. He was vomiting blood, and the flames around him had disappeared. He was paper white, filled with shock. Long Chen's attack had managed to force back the cauldron. That cauldron was connected to Dan Chu's mind, and his soul had received a heavy backlash. It was a heavy injury. Die! Dan Chu's face was twisted as he suddenly coughed up golden blood onto the cauldron. The cauldron had already shrunk, but now it once more unleashed brilliant splendor, its runes activating again. It shot towards Long Chen. Dan Chu had paid an incredible price to make the cauldron attack once more. His eyes were now listless and dull. But to kill Long Chen, he couldn't care about that. Long Chen's power terrified him, and he was willing to pay any price to kill him. The cauldron was only a foot tall now, but it was surrounded by countless runes as it smashed toward Long Chen, with space crumbling wherever it passed. If Long Chen was struck by it, he would definitely die. Long Chen's spiritual yuan was almost exhausted. Even if his body had recovered, he couldn't block this terrifying attack. Seeing that he had been locked down by this cauldron and had no way to run, for some unknown reason, Long Chen suddenly thought of a certain thing. A black pot suddenly appeared in Long Chen's hand. This looked like a completely ordinary black pot. It even had 2 handles, making it seem even more like a regular iron pot used for cooking. But Long Chen had felt from the start that this pot wasn't ordinary. Right now, he couldn't think too much about it. He smashed the pot at the cauldron. Boom! The ground cracked and the sky swayed. Long Chen felt a terrifying force send him flying. He didn't even know how far he flew, but in any case, he clearly heard every single one of his bones breaking. His body almost collapsed, and he tumbled across the ground, almost fainting. When he finally stopped, Long Chen once more drank the divine life elixir. The slain sea demons from the Eastern Sea had given Long Chen 3 jugs of the divine life elixir. Drinking a few mouthfuls, his injuries instantly healed. Long Chen hastily looked forward to see that there was now a 10,000-mile hole where he had been. A cauldron and a pot were lying at the bottom. Long Chen couldn't help being delighted. The pot wasn't the slightest bit damaged and looked as unremarkable as before. He rushed over and grabbed the pot. Then he looked at the distant cauldron lying beside Dan Chu. Dan Chu's body had already deformed from the impact and he was simply laying there, constantly coughing up blood. His broken innards were also coughed up. He clearly suffered a terrifying internal injury. His spiritual yuan was completely exhausted. Let alone using heavenly Tao energy to heal, he didn't even have the strength to take out a medicinal pill from his spatial ring. The impact from the cauldron and pot colliding had been absolutely terrifying, and he hadn't been able to bear it. In order to save his life, he had used his final bit of essence blood and spiritual strength to recall the cauldron to protect himself. But he had reached the verge of collapse. Seeing Long Chen walking over with a pot, his eyes were full of fury. He had never dreamed that Long Chen possessed so many trump cards and was even capable of blocking his cauldron. After being duped at the beginning, an easy victory had turned into a complete defeat. If he had attacked all out from the beginning, perhaps this wouldn't have been the conclusion. Long Chen carried the pot over to the almost dead Dan Chu. He didn't dare to be careless. This kind of person had too many trump cards, and who knew when he would unleash another one? Carrying the pot made him feel much more at ease. This pot hadn't disappointed him. It had actually blocked that terrifying cauldron. Walking to the panting Dan Chu, Long Chen kicked him. Like a mass of flesh, Dan Chu rolled across the ground several times, almost collapsing. With his butt on his head, he once more vomited blood. Looks like I don't need to worry. Looking at Dan Chu's state, he grabbed the cauldron. The cauldron's runes instantly lit up. Long Chen's arm almost blew apart. His skin broke and blood poured out. He was blown back into the distance. He looked in shock at the cauldron. So it was capable of unleashing its own attacks. Without a word, Long Chen smashed the pot at it. As a result, the cauldron's runes dimmed somewhat. Seeing that this was effective, he continuously smashed it with the pot. The cauldron rapidly dimmed, while the pot grew darker, its aura growing stronger. It's absorbing its energy for itself? Long Chen was startled. This pot was strange. Back then, it had extracted his spiritual yuan. Now it was absorbing the cauldron's energy. Perhaps his luck really had turned and he had obtained a heaven-defying treasure. This pot was extraordinary for it to even suppress such a terrifying cauldron. It had to be known that the pot had been on the verge of collapse when he had found it. After smashing it a few times, Long Chen hastily stopped. He found that the cauldron was rapidly dimming, and it sent him a message that it submitted. Now he was worried that if he kept hitting it, it would be crippled. "You're willing to submit to me?" asked Long Chen. The cauldron suddenly unleashed a pure white light. A small rune appeared. When it appeared, the distant, unconscious Dan Chu quivered. A spiritual seal? Long Chen started. Suddenly, that rune ignited on its own and was incinerated into nothing. Damn it, I've lost connection to the blazing dragon cauldron. Within the central plains, in a place far away from the Grand Xia, there was a city. Within that city was a soaring tower, and there was an elder within that suddenly let out a heaven-shaking roar. This elder was the Pill Tower's master that Long Chen had once seen before, Dan Teng. Right now, he looked almost insane. Something definitely happened to Chuer. In order to make sure this matter was completed perfectly, he had sent Dan Chu, his Pill Tower's top genius, and he had even lent him his ancestral item. The blazing dragon cauldron was something Dan Teng's ancestors had left for him. Naturally, the reason ancestral items were called ancestral items was because generations of experts had used their bloodline to nourish it. An ancestral item's power far surpassed a king item. Normally, only a soul transformation expert could use it. But because ancestral items had spiritual seals binding them and had been nourished by one bloodline, descendants of that bloodline could use their bloodline power to order the ancestral item to attack, even if they were too weak to use it normally. However, although an ancestral item was powerful, it had a drawback. If the spiritual seal was too forceful, it would be like slavery and the item spirit would have a natural resistance toward it. It wouldn't be very loyal. That was why the cauldron was now willing to submit to Long Chen. It even incinerated that spiritual seal. This spiritual seal was something it originally hadn't been able to resolve. But in order to allow Dan Chu to use it, Dan Teng had removed a portion of the original spiritual seal and allowed Dan Chu to place his own. But Dan Chu's spiritual strength was now exhausted. His spiritual seal had lost almost all effect. Furthermore, within this minor world, Dan Teng's spiritual seal was weakened. So to save its own life, the cauldron used its core energy to forcibly remove the restrictions of the spiritual seal. Long Chen didn't know that Dan Teng was currently roaring furiously. He looked at the white light coming from the cauldron, and he sensed a message. Its meaning was that Long Chen could place his own spiritual seal. It was willing to submit to him as long as Long Chen stopped hitting it. Otherwise, it would be destroyed. Long Chen looked at the black pot in his hand that was now shining slightly to the cauldron that was just waiting for his spiritual seal. He was delighted. Today, he had obtained 2 amazing treasures. If you want to follow me, then that's enough. There's no need for a spiritual seal. In my life, there are only enemies or companions. Hopefully you'll live up to my trust. Long Chen placed a hand on the cauldron. It wasn't that Long Chen was so arrogant as to not place a spiritual seal. The real problem was that the cauldron was too powerful. The item spirit was also intelligent, and so Long Chen couldn't view it as a slave. Therefore he didn't want to place a spiritual seal. Furthermore, he sensed terror and helplessness from the cauldron, but he didn't sense any animosity. That was why Long Chen dared to accept it. Long Chen trusted that he could keep this cauldron suppressed. Even without the pot, he had no fear of it. Within his body, there was something that could suppress all other objects, the primal chaos bead. So far, it had never failed him. Even in the immemorial path, the Eastern Wasteland Bell had been extremely intimidated by the primal chaos bead. Although the Eastern Wasteland Bell hadn't said it explicitly, Long Chen could sense it. If even the divine item, the Eastern Wasteland Bell, was afraid of it, what was there to fear from a cauldron? Long Chen carefully examined the cauldron in his hand. The cauldron had 4 feet, implying the 4 directions of north, east, south, and west. Normally, such cauldrons would be square on the outside and square on the inside. But this cauldron was square on the outside and circular on the inside. It was a cauldron specifically used for refining pills. It was different from a pill furnace in that a pill furnace only had 3 feet and was as round as a ball outside and inside. It also had a lid, but medicinal cauldrons did not. There were 2 extremely detailed runes around the opening that were dragon-shaped. The mouths of those dragons were spurting flames, and they were both incredibly lifelike. Blazing Dragon Cauldron. Long Chen finally saw 3 immortal characters on the cauldron. Only then did he learn its name. This Blazing Dragon Cauldron's item spirit was expressing its gratefulness to him. After thinking about it, Long Chen directly placed it in his spiritual space. The Blazing Dragon Cauldron would be nourished by his soul within his mind sea. That made it even more grateful, and it even began to give him some of its secrets. Only now did Long Chen learn that the Blazing Dragon Cauldron was an existence that surpassed king items. It had been passed down and enslaved through generations of the Dan family. It was no wonder it would be so grateful that Long Chen wouldn't place a slave mark on it. He had no time right now to ask it about all of its secrets. He walked over to Dan Chu and saw that his face was still as twisted as ever. However, now he no longer had any of his grandness. He looked just as pathetic as a dead dog. "Well, are you still thinking of my treasures?" asked Long Chen. "Long Chen, you've stolen the Blazing Dragon Cauldron. The Tower Master will not let you off, said Dan Chu, filled with rancor. He felt that his defeat in this battle was a complete injustice. He was filled with hatred. Teethich, I'm the one who's not going to let him off. The Tower Master you're talking about should be that old bastard Dan Teng, right? He and Xian Jizi want to target me? I'll make sure that bastard Dan Teng's balls really hurt. Do you have anything else to say? If not, I'll be sending you on your way. Ah, that's right, money isn't useful to a dead person. I'll help you take care of it. Long Chen took away Dan Chu's spatial ring. Glancing inside, he saw it was a huge life ring with over 100 square miles in space. It was packed with all kinds of precious medicines. Regretfully, other than those precious medicinal ingredients, the rest were all bottles filled with medicinal pills, as well as some alchemy techniques or theories. Those things were useless to Long Chen. But the medicinal ingredients made him red-eyed. He was truly worthy of being the Pill Tower's most outstanding junior disciple. He was incredibly rich. There were at least hundreds of species that Long Chen hadn't possessed before. That was incredibly important to him. Putting away the spatial ring, he said, "So there's nothing left to say. You can go now." Long Chen stabbed Blood Drinker at Dan Chu's forehead. This was the fastest way to annihilate a person's soul. There was no need to first kill the body and then target the soul. But just as his saber was about to pierce his head, a jade tablet materialized over it. The jade tablet was something almost identical to Long Chen's soul-calming jade. The difference was that his soul-calming jade had 9 veins, but this one only had 7. This soul-calming jade floated above Dan Chu's forehead. It was shattered by the tip of Long Chen's saber on contact, but in that instant, a barrier of light wrapped around Dan Chu, blocking Long Chen's attack. "Oh, Long Chen, you can't kill me." Within the light, Dan Chu suddenly began to laugh. A fierce-looking elder appeared within the barrier. "Long Chen, you dare to kill my Pill Tower's disciple and steal my ancestral treasure, the Blazing Dragon Cauldron. This time, not even the Xiantian Dao sect will be able to protect you. Hand over the Blazing Dragon Cauldron and I can spare your life, otherwise." This elder was precisely the Pill Tower's master, Dan Teng. Killing intent was blazing within his eyes as he glared at Long Chen. Even separated by an incomprehensible distance, Long Chen could feel his anger. But thinking about it, he supposed that was forgivable. Instead of getting his treasures, Dan Teng had lost his own ancestral treasure. He'd probably be angry too if the positions were reversed. Long Chen looked at Dan Teng indifferently. There was clearly no way to placate Dan Teng's killing intent, and yet he still had to act like there was room for compromise. Long Chen involuntarily spat out one word to describe him: idiot. Within the light barrier, Dan Teng was thinking about how to intimidate Long Chen and force him to hand over the Blazing Dragon Cauldron when Long Chen's words struck him across the face. Do you believe when I say I can destroy your entire Xiantian Dao sect?" roared Dan Teng, flames almost spurting from his eyes. He knew that Long Chen had no family he could threaten. The only thing that could make him have some misgivings was the Xiantian Dao sect. "Brag a bit harder and I might believe it," said Long Chen. Seeing Dan Teng's face swell up until it looked like a pig's, Long Chen couldn't help but sneer inside. No matter how amazing the Pill Tower was, it was a neutral power. Did he really dare to destroy one of the 3 heavenly sects, the Xiantian Dao sect? This bragging didn't have any skill. First, ignoring whether or not you have the power to destroy my Xiantian Dao sect, can you even tell me what excuse you'll give for attacking the Xiantian Dao sect? You really are an idiot who will even listen to that other idiot Xian Jizi's lies. Just for greed, you were willing to invert right and wrong and frame me as a heaven Caesar. Back then the Xian master used the entire Xiantian Dao sect to guarantee there was no chance I was a heaven Caesar right in front of all the Martial Heaven Alliance. He slapped your faces so hard that as I see it, you ended up slapped into an idiot. Even now, what reason do you have to so openly collude with the Grand Han and interfere with the matters of the ancient nations? Your goal is only to kill me and take some treasure that doesn't even exist. Tell me, don't you think you're an idiot? Perhaps if you're able to kill enough people to keep the truth from getting out, things won't be so bad. But if you aren't old ghost Dan Teng, although I don't guarantee that I can make your balls hurt, I guarantee I'll make your head hurt. I'll make your scandal public so that the entire Marshall Heaven continent can see that the Pill Tower is full of hypocrites selling dog meat as sheep meat, trash capable of using any underhanded methods, sneered Long Chen. Do you think anyone would believe a brat like you? So what if I wrongly accused you? Nothing I set my sight on ever manages to get away. If you're smart, you'll immediately hand over your secrets and treasures. Otherwise, not only will I kill you, but not one member of your Dragonblood Legion or lovers will survive. When the time comes, don't regret this decision. I, Dan Teng, will use my status as the master of the Pill Tower to tell you that this region is my world. No one can go against me here. There are countless sects that have close relationships with my Pill Tower. As long as I say the word, all of them will point their spears at your Shen Dao sect. When the time comes, the Shen Dao sect will end up wiped out, all because of you. You, Long Chen, are claimed to be a hot-blooded hero, but are you not even loyal enough to spill some blood to protect your brothers' heads? In my view, you are just a weak coward, willing to bring about the destruction of his own sect for some treasures, a petty person who will throw away his brothers and lovers without a second thought, sneered Dan Teng. Long Chen smiled coldly. Truly shameless. Even when threatening others, he could make up something so pompous-sounding. It was like the only way for Long Chen to be a hero was to hand over his treasures. If he didn't, he would become a despicable coward. But Long Chen didn't mind, nor did he get angry. Within the primal chaos space, the photographic jade was still activated. Dan Teng's words and shameless appearance were all recorded. Long Chen, I'll give you one more chance. Hand over your treasures, and I'll spare your life. If you don't, not only will you die, but your lovers, your brothers, your senior apprentice brothers, senior apprentice sisters, they'll all die. Think about it. Dan Teng looked at Long Chen coldly, his voice full of confidence. He truly did have that power. Countless sects had secretly been consumed by the Pill Tower, becoming nothing more than their troops. On the surface, it only looked like they were cooperating. But as long as the Pill Tower gave the word, those sects would start making all kinds of little moves to threaten the Shen Dao sect. Old idiot, you're too confident. With your intelligence, you're not suited to scheming. If you tried scheming, you'd be played to death. You've already released your fart, so you can leave now. Don't hold me up from killing people. Long Chen once more stabbed Blood Drinker at Dan Chu. However, his spiritual yuan was almost exhausted. Blood Drinker pierced into the light barrier, but then its movements were slowed. It inched toward Dan Chu's head. Tower Master, save me, cried Dan Chu. Dan Teng was Dan Chu's paternal great-grandfather. But within his family, they had to call family members by their official positions. Long Chen, you're consigning every single person beside you to eternal damnation. Are you willing to do that? Shouted Dan Teng. Long Chen ignored him. Although his saber was affected by the light barrier and its progress was slow, he was increasing the power. It was less than 3 inches from Dan Chu's head. Dan Chu was terrified. Previously he hadn't been afraid, not because he was courageous, but because he had known that with the soul-calming jade protecting him, he would be automatically saved. But now, Long Chen was still trying to kill him. He couldn't help being terrified, and he begged the Tower Master to save him. Within the light barrier, Dan Teng suddenly formed hand seals and the light barrier flashed, sending Long Chen flying. Long Chen, since you're so unreasonable, don't blame me for being merciless. Just wait. I will definitely make you regret this. After saying this, a blazing light enveloped Dan Chu. Spatial energy began to condense. Long Chen's expression instantly became ugly. This bastard was trying to transport him away. Dan Chu was enveloped by runes and floated into the air. He laughed. Ha, Long Chen, just wait. I've already said that I'll flay all your skin and tear out your muscles and bones. But now I've changed my plans. Instead, I'll kill every member of your Dragonblood Legion and play with all your lovers until they die. Bang. Dan Chu's body was rapidly fading. Just as he was about to be transported away, a black pot smashed toward him. The runes around him exploded, and the spatial energy disappeared. Dan Chu's laughter was severed, and he became horrified. No! A blood-red saber slashed through the air, blowing Dan Chu's body to bits. A heavenly genius fell just like this. Equals Dan Teng, Pilsor. It sounds like, meaning pain in the balls literally, also equivalent to the expression pain in the ass. Dan Teng's hands blew out of their seal, and he swayed back and forth. His expression twisted furiously. Long Chen. These two words were hissed out of the cracks between his teeth. His voice was full of killing intent. He couldn't comprehend how Long Chen had broken his spatial art. Just at this moment, a light cracking sound rang out. A jade slip in Dan Teng's hands cracked and shattered. This was a soul jade slip, and it was extremely precious. Only geniuses of the main bloodline in the Pill Tower were qualified to possess a soul jade slip. The soul jade slip was connected to Dan Chu's soul. When Dan Chu's soul was annihilated, the jade slip had also exploded. This meant Dan Chu was definitely dead. Long Chen, if I don't tear you to pieces, then I, Dan Teng, swear I'm not human. Dan Teng's eyes were red like a furious beast as he let out a heaven-shaking roar. Gather all the experts and alert all our subordinate powers. I want to see just who dares to block me. Ordered Dan Chu. As you command. A reply came from within the darkness. Dan Teng's hair was standing on end. His fury had maxed out. Long Chen was still alive, and he hadn't even gotten a look at his treasures. On the other hand, the ancestral item he had lent his descendant had been taken away along with that precious descendant's life. It had to be known that Dan Chu was the junior he had had the highest hopes for, but he had died like this. How could he not be aggrieved? Martial Heaven Alliance, Xiantian Dao Sect, let's see just what you use to block me this time. An icy light appeared in Dan Chu's eyes. Within this dark space, it was like the eyes of a beast, sinister and sharp. Killing Dan Chu with his saber, the instant his body exploded, a golden and a violet flame light appeared. The golden light rapidly dimmed, while the violet light suddenly tried to flee. Hua Long appeared and devoured both of them. The violet light was the soul-devouring violet flame seed, while the golden light was Dan Chu's core flame. Long Chen had yet to understand what this golden flame was. It was capable of becoming solid, and its power had deeply shaken him. That was because Long Chen had noticed that Dan Chu had always been using his golden flame to suppress and control the soul-devouring violet flame. That meant that this golden flame was much stronger than it. After devouring those two flame seeds, Hua Long returned to the primal chaos space. Within the primal chaos space, the two flame seeds, which had been struggling fiercely, immediately turned still. These two flame seeds were the best food for Hua Long. Devouring the soul-devouring violet flame's seed would allow Hua Long's power to almost perfectly match it. Then once Hua Long devoured the golden flame, even if its power didn't surpass the soul-devouring violet flame, it would at least be equally matched with it. But right now, Hua Long was extremely weak. Almost all its energy had been sucked dry to unleash that full-power starfall. Now, it was no longer possible to instantly refine either of the flame seeds. Fortunately, the two flame seeds couldn't resist the primal chaos space. Hua Long could slowly recover and refine them. Long Chen had just placated Hua Long when a golden light shot at him at an incredible speed. Furthermore, the power contained within this light caused the void to quiver. Without even thinking about it, Long Chen blocked it with the pot. An explosion caused Long Chen to grunt as he was blown back by what he now realized was a golden arrow. Just at this moment, a winged, eagle-eyed man appeared in the distant air. He held a golden bow in his left hand and was staring at Long Chen. Clearly, that golden arrow had come from him. Seeing that his silent sneak attack had failed, he immediately crushed a jade plate. A fluctuation spread in every direction. It was a kind of communication signal. Long Chen's arm was numb. His spiritual yuan was exhausted. Although the pot had blocked the arrow, his physical body had no spiritual yuan to support it, making him much weaker than usual. A rank 7 celestial. Long Chen narrowed his eyes and had a bad feeling. With his spiritual yuan exhausted, his combat power was less than a tenth of his normal state. Killing this person would be very difficult. Furthermore, he had a pair of wings and used a bow. He was clearly a long-distance fighter, and such people were usually specialized in speed. That made killing him even more difficult. But the thing that made Long Chen the most uneasy was the communication signal he had released. There were definitely many experts rushing over here now. At that time, things would become even worse. Just at this moment, 2 more figures rushed over. Long Chen narrowed his eyes. These ancient race experts were also rank 7 celestials. Attack together. We don't need to kill him, just stall him. The eagle-eyed expert's wings began to shine, and a golden arrow condensed on his bow. The arrow then shot out at incredible speed. It had only just left the bow when it reached Long Chen. The arrow once more crashed into the pot. The pot was fine and the arrow exploded, but Long Chen was once more blown back. At this time, the other 2 ancient race experts attacked him. One wielded a staff while the other wielded a saber that had been modified to be specialized in slashing. Both of them had summoned their rank 7 celestial manifestations. Despite knowing that Long Chen was already exhausted, they weren't the slightest bit careless. They used their full strength to attack him. Holding the pot in his left hand and blood drinker in his right hand, he blocked their attacks with just the pot. He vomited blood on impact, and the pot almost escaped his grasp. Just as their attacks landed, a silent arrow shot toward Long Chen's back. Long Chen swung out blood drinker, blowing apart the arrow, but he was once more blown away. The 2 ancient race experts took advantage of this to unleash a barrage of attacks. Fortunately, the pot was strong enough to use as a shield, but he was still repeatedly blown back and injured. Long Chen's heart shook. Continuing like this was not an option. Even if a rank 8 celestial didn't come, he would be killed just by these 3. That sneak-attacking archer was the most detestable. Each time he attacked would be timed for when Long Chen was busy blocking the other 2 ancient race experts. Long Chen was almost heavily injured several times. Nothing to do but be ruthless. Long Chen clenched his teeth. Suddenly he smashed the pot forward, blocking their 2 weapons. This full-force attack caused them to fly back. Just at this moment, an insidious arrow pierced through Long Chen's back. It had been timed perfectly. It left behind a fist-sized bloody hole in Long Chen's body, delighting the archer. But his expression quickly changed. He saw that his arrow continued through Long Chen's body and toward the staff-wielding ancient race expert. Watch out! The staff-wielding ancient race expert had just raised his staff to strike Long Chen when an arrow burst out of Long Chen's chest and at him. At that moment, he heard the archer's warning and gave up his attack, dodging to the side. But just as he dodged the arrow, a blood-colored saber slashed through his neck from the other direction. A head flew high into the air. Regretfully, this attack had no spiritual yuan inside it, or the head would have instantly exploded. Just at this moment, a roar shook the heavens. A lightning dragon flew out, smashing into the other shocked ancient race expert, while its tail flicked out at the head. The huge lightning dragon forced back the ancient race expert, while its tail struck the head, instantly killing that person. The saber-wielding ancient race expert had his body turn numb. He was just about to circulate his spiritual yuan to expel the thunder force when he felt a burst of pain on the top of his head. A blood-colored saber cut him in 2 from head to toe. Even his armor shattered. Thank you, blood drinker. The reason Long Chen had been able to kill this person was all thanks to Blood Drinker. It had used up all its energy to break through the armor's defenses. After killing the 2 of them, Long Chen was panting for breath. The hand he was holding Blood Drinker in was starting to tremble intensely, meaning he had overdrafted his power. Suddenly he raised the pot, blocking an arrow. He coughed up blood and shot back like a shooting star. Lei Long, eliminate him. Lei Long charged at the distant archer. Its huge tail whipped toward him. But that archer's wings flapped, and it dodged Lei Long's attack, once more shooting an arrow at Long Chen. Long Chen held the pot in both hands, and he was once more blown back, his whole body quivering. He hastily gulped a mouthful of the divine life elixir, turned, and fled. Lei Long was crazily attacking the archer, but the archer's armor lit up, temporarily isolating him from Lei Long's lightning runes. He flew after Long Chen, and as Long Chen had expected, he specialized in speed. Long Chen was unable to fly right now. He could only use his feet. Each step allowed him to cross a mile, but it was still too slow as he was constantly harassed by arrows. Long Chen was like a rabbit being chased by a hunter. He was in an incredibly miserable state, occasionally coughing up blood. Damn it, so even I end up like this. A weakened tiger can die to a dog. If I was in my peak state, I'd kill this brat with a single slap. Long Chen was infuriated yet helpless to do anything. Most irritating of all, this archer was constantly sprinkling some unknown powder as he chased. Without even thinking about it, it had to be a marker to make it easier for others to follow. No good. I have to think of something to get away, or I'm definitely dead. Do I not have anything I can use? Long Chen regretted hitting the blazing dragon cauldron so many times. It had lost too much of its power, or it could have helped him smash this hateful fellow. Long Chen hastily flipped through the primal chaos space. Suddenly, a certain thing fell into Long Chen's sight. Lei Long was unable to do anything to the ancient race archer, so its body suddenly lit up, unleashing blinding arcs of lightning that made it so the archer couldn't see anything for a moment. In that instant, a 3-foot sphere shot toward him. The ancient race archer was truly worthy of being a rank 7 celestial. Even though he was blinded and the thunder force was disturbing his divine sense, he still sensed it. He rapidly fell back as he blocked with his bow. Boom! Just as his bow touched the sphere exploded and countless fragments devoured everything around him. The archer was shocked. Before he could even understand what had happened, dozens of fragments tore through his body, and one of them severed his neck. His head had only just left his body when Lei Long transformed into a lightning spear and stabbed through it, instantly killing him. Guo Ran's wares are all top grade. Looks like his bragging was the truth. That sphere was one of the bombs that had been used as a final trump card against the sea demons in the Eastern Sea. But instead of being used on them, they had ended up giving a vicious blow to the ancient races and heaven-suppressing magic sect's disciples. Back then, Guo Ran had given Long Chen his greatest masterpiece as a souvenir. But in truth, it was actually just to show off. But now this bomb was even able to kill a rank 7 celestial when Long Chen used it properly. Not good. Gotta run. Long Chen's expression suddenly changed. He sensed several powerful auras rushing straight over. Clenching his teeth, he poured the tiny bit of spiritual yuan he had just recovered into his boots and vanished like a wisp of smoke. Less than 2 breaths after Long Chen had left, several figures appeared on the battlefield. One of them was the rank 8 celestial from the elephant ancient race. He looked over the battlefield and said, "His aura hasn't dissipated yet. He can't be far." Everyone split up. The others immediately fanned out, rapidly flying through the air. All of them were on alert, ready to unleash their strongest attacks at any time. They knew that after consecutive battles, Long Chen had long since become an arrow at the end of its path. Once they found him, he would likely unleash a final death blow, so they were all very careful. None of them dared to be careless when it came to handling Long Chen. Long Chen was only able to endure for a dozen breaths before his spiritual yuan was used up by the boots. Suddenly he saw a waterfall ahead. There was a pool below it, and he sensed a strange fluctuation coming from within the pool. Hesitating for a moment, Long Chen dived in. Only once he was inside the pool did he realize it was just like an ancient well. Although it hadn't looked remarkable on the outside, it was incredibly deep. Long Chen had gone down hundreds of meters without seeing the bottom. Once he was over a mile deep, he saw a curtain of light blocking the water. Entering the light, he realized it was an immortal cave. When he looked back, the light curtain had vanished, and the water of the pool had also disappeared. He had unwittingly been transported to some kind of special location. Suddenly, 8 pearls at the top of 8 stone pillars lit up, making this immortal cave as bright as day. With this light, he managed to get a clear look. This immortal cave was like the inside of an ancient palace. The 8 stone pillars had fierce beast carvings on them. Long Chen didn't recognize a single one of those beasts. Standing within this room, he saw a throne ahead. The throne was empty, but it emitted its own powerful pressure. On the wall behind the throne, there was a huge mural 300 meters high. There were countless creatures depicted within it. Flying birds, walking beasts, all living in peace. He didn't know whether it was a misperception or not, but when he looked at those creatures, he felt like they were looking back at him, appraising him. This mural was filled with Tao charm. This painting is definitely a treasure. A fiery light appeared in Long Chen's eyes as he looked at the mural. How can you be sure? Suddenly, a voice rang out behind Long Chen. Long Chen jumped in fright. Without even thinking about it, he smashed behind him with his pot. But after swinging the pot, he was shocked to find that the pot had disappeared from his hand. Instead, it appeared in the hand of an elder that had appeared behind him. The elder was tall and lean. He wore cyan robes and had a scholar's band wrapped around his head. He looked just like an old Confucian scholar. He possessed a simple and elegant air. The elder seemed to be lost in thought as he held the pot. He gently stroked it with his other hand. The pot actually let out a rumbling sound that sounded like the wailing of a child. When I forged you, it was in recollection of my childhood memories. You were the proof of my Tao heart. But now that I think about it, it was nothing more than a joke. Becoming a god or an immortal is nothing more than this, sighed the elder. His eyes were lost as he had sunk into his memories. Long Chen didn't dare to make a sound. He wasn't able to sense this elder's aura or even his existence. And yet it was like his existence encompassed all of heaven and earth. Long Chen had never seen anyone as terrifying as this. It was like on his own, he was the entire world. In this world, he was in control of everyone's life and death. All right, you were born from my hands, but you were almost destroyed because of me. Now you've encountered a new master. I will give you some good fortune to make up for that ancient debt. A rune appeared in the elder's hand, and he slowly placed it on the bottom of the pot. The pot's aura rapidly changed. Despite clearly being an ordinary pot, it now possessed a sacred and divine air. That divine air slowly faded, and the elder returned the pot to Long Chen. It has fate with you. I hope you won't let it down. Long Chen was in a daze, but he obediently received the pot. However, the pot was in a strange state, and it seemed to be lost in slumber. Senior, don't tell me that you are the master of this minor world? After a long moment of hesitation, Long Chen still ended up asking this question that even he couldn't really believe. Yes, this minor world was created by me. It is the only inheritance I left behind before ascending. The elder nodded. Long Chen was shocked by this. Didn't this mean that this elder had become a god or immortal? No wonder he couldn't sense any of the aura of a person. He looked in shock at this elder, but then he suddenly realized he was wrong. If someone had become a god or immortal, there should be an immortal charm around them. After all, even the Shen master had a very, very slight amount of immortal qi revolving around him. Why did this elder possess no aura at all? You don't need to be shocked. Right now, I am not an immortal, nor am I a person. If I were to pick the closest term, I am currently a ghost. The elder smiled lightly. Senior, please forgive this junior for not being able to believe such a thing. Long Chen shook his head, because he didn't sense the slightest aura of death from the elder. What an interesting child. No wonder we have fate together. I was a free cultivator, and I had no disciples, sons, or daughters to carry on my inheritance. The only legacy I left behind is the myriad spirit diagram within this minor world. Not only did you enter the inheritance region, but you also found an item I forged back in the day. It seems you are the person I was waiting for to pass on my legacy. The elder smiled at Long Chen, as if relieved from a heavy burden. Long Chen was stunned. Was this really possible? His luck had turned? He felt like he had never had such good luck in his entire life. Now that it happened, he didn't dare to believe it. But the curious thing is, you aren't even a soul cultivator, let alone a beast tamer. The myriad spirit diagram shouldn't have much meaning to you. The elder now shook his head. Senior, can we not play around? Just tell me for sure whether you're going to give me this treasure or not. My heart can't handle these sudden turns. Long Chen bitterly smiled. First, he made him as happy as possible, and then he said it was useless to him. It couldn't be that the next words out of his mouth would be sorry. It turns out you aren't the destined person, right? That would definitely be able to make a person cough up enough blood to die. Ah, don't worry, you are the destined person. I was just curious. This myriad spirit diagram is the cumulation of my cultivation. I cultivated the path of all beasts to achieve my Tao. The myriad spirit diagram has thousands of divine abilities of the myriad beasts in this world. I was a beast tamer in my life, and my true body ascended through the path of 10,000 beasts. I left behind the myriad spirit diagram as a legacy for a destined person. Although you are not a beast tamer, the destined person doesn't necessarily have to cultivate the same path. It's also possible you are destined to pass it on to someone else. As for whether or not you'll be capable of that, it'll be up to fate. A person can only do so much. The elder smiled. The elder beckoned, and the mural on the wall began to roll up until it was a scroll only a foot thick. He gently rubbed it, a complicated expression in his eyes. He sighed. Becoming a god or immortal is nothing more than this. In the end, everything was still futile. Why bother? The elder stroked the scroll a few more times before handing it to Long Chen. Help me find a suitable disciple to carry on my legacy. It can count as leaving my mark on the world. In the end, gods and immortals are nothing more than ordinary people, unable to sever the feelings in their hearts. Long Chen received the scroll and solemnly said, "Senior, don't worry. I have a genius beast tamer by my side. Your inheritance will definitely continue." The elder smiled slightly and nodded. This promise was comforting. He said, "It seems you have a powerful physical body. I suppose I can't let you have come for nothing, so I have a body-tempering art I can transmit to you." The elder pressed a finger against Long Chen's forehead. A torrent of energy poured into his head. Suddenly, the silent primal chaos bead began to rapidly revolve, and a terrifying aura erupted. The elder's arm exploded from some terrifying energy. "Senior." Long Chen was appalled. Just what had happened? The elder stood there, his arm gone. But not the slightest bit of blood appeared. At this time, his body suddenly began to grow faint. Only now did Long Chen realize that this elder hadn't possessed a body of flesh, but was simply composed of some kind of energy. So that's what it was. The elder looked at Long Chen. He smiled and then began to laugh uproariously. "Haha, the game breaker has finally appeared, haha." Following the elder's laughter, the entire palace rocked. An indescribable energy seemed to be attempting to destroy it. At the same time, the elder's figure grew dimmer. "Senior," cried Long Chen. "It's fine. My true body was long since destroyed. This is just a strand of divine will to protect my inheritance. Now that I see you, I'm extremely comforted. I was originally a free cultivator without any care. But I was still drawn into the game, my body killed, my Tao destroyed. I was a bit unresigned. Child, it is fated for your life to be full of trouble and misfortune. Tribulations will come for you over and over, because this entire world wants you exterminated." Rumble. The world began to intensely shake, as if it was about to crumble. A sneer appeared on the elder's face. He looked at the ceiling contemptuously. "Even within this minor world, it's impossible to escape your senses?" The elder continued speaking to Long Chen. "Child, I don't have much more time. Because I've exposed the heavenly Tao secrets I've already been locked onto. However, I'm still unable to say more to you. You have to be careful as well. Once you grow up to a certain level, the heavenly Taos will set their sights on you. Do your best to get stronger." The elder grew transparent, looking like a clump of smoke that would dissipate at any time. But he was still smiling. "Senior, please tell me your name," called out Long Chen. Although he didn't know what was happening, he knew this elder was about to disappear. Dust to dust, earth to earth. Within the cycle of the heavenly Taos, what is it the point of a name? Let things come naturally. The elder completely vanished. Following his disappearance, the world stopped trembling and that indescribable energy also vanished. But Long Chen was still filled with shock. It seemed that elder had known some of the heavenly Dao secrets, but all he had said was that he was the game breaker. He hadn't dared to say any more. Game. How was it supposed to be broken? This elder had clearly ascended, becoming in existence on the level of a god or immortal. Even though this had just been a strand of his divine will, he was probably an unrivaled existence in this world. But in front of that energy, he still hadn't had any ability to resist. Furthermore, why would the primal chaos bead attack the elder? He had clearly been helping him kindly. The blazing dragon cauldron said that he had no need to use other pill furnaces for alchemy. That was looking down on it. He couldn't help finding it funny, but he was also shocked at the high quality of the blazing dragon cauldron. Not only was it able to perfectly express its thoughts, but it was also smart. Despite being just an item spirit, it was at least as intelligent as a child. But its temperament was also like a child's. It was competitive, even smashing apart the good pill furnace Long Chen had been using. If you can't properly refine the Mandara body tempering pill, we're going to have a problem. With his pill furnace smashed apart, Long Chen had no other option. He could only use the blazing dragon cauldron. The blazing dragon cauldron slowly revolved in the air, a faint halo of light around it. It once more sent him a message, this time saying that its core had been heavily injured, making it so it couldn't fight. But alchemy didn't use up its core energy. In fact, it would allow it to recover rapidly. That shocked Long Chen. It actually had such an ability? He really had picked up a treasure. In the future, he would let the blazing dragon cauldron refine pills all day. Taking out the Mandara grass, he was just about to refine it into powder when the blazing dragon cauldron automatically sucked it in. Long Chen was shocked to find that the blazing dragon cauldron had its own separate space for refining ingredients into medicinal powders and storing them. Long Chen took out a large batch of medicinal ingredients, and the blazing dragon cauldron sucked them all in, refining them into powders. It actually possessed its own flame energy that could be used to purify the medicinal energy. Feeling the blazing dragon cauldron summoning, Long Chen sent his own flames inside it. Countless runes lit up on it, and the two dragon-shaped runes began to shine brightly, forming a runic barrier above the cauldron's opening. Once this light barrier formed, Long Chen noticed heaven and earth's spiritual qi pouring inside. The blazing dragon cauldron was not only absorbing spiritual qi from the air, but it was also merging various medicinal powders in accordance with different proportions at a shocking speed. As the powders merged, impurities were sent flying out of the light barrier. It was actually undergoing a second purification while sucking in spiritual qi. Long Chen was dumbfounded as he watched. His heart leapt in joy. This blazing dragon cauldron was absolutely amazing. In just a dozen breaths' time, the first batch of pills were done being refined. There were 9 of them, all top grade. They transformed into black scorpions that suddenly attacked the light barrier. These were top-grade Mandara body tempering pills. Top-grade pills had spirituality, and they would transform into creatures based on the characteristics of the pill. The Mandara body tempering pill was a poison pill with fierce power. So the creature it transformed into was also explosive and fierce. The blazing dragon cauldron shook and those scorpions disappeared, obediently becoming pills lying at the bottom. Long Chen took one out. He sighed emotionally. He had picked up a heaven-defying treasure this time. Any pills the blazing dragon cauldron had refined in the past would be remembered. The pill formula, the merging process, the refining process, the flame changes, and all the various taboos were memorized. That was why the blazing dragon cauldron only needed to be provided with flames and spiritual strength. Long Chen had never experienced such an easy way of refining pills. Blazing dragon cauldron, there were several minor mistakes in your merging process. Here, try this. Long Chen told the blazing dragon cauldron his own merging method and flame changes. The reason the blazing dragon cauldron was able to refine the Mandara body tempering pill was because one of Dan Teng's ancestors had refined it. The blazing dragon cauldron still remembered it. But that pill formula had several flaws. Long Chun corrected them, and he began controlling the flame with the blazing dragon cauldron. As a result, when the pill formed, it transformed into a fierce scorpion over a foot long. It crazily attacked the barrier. So I can even refine a giant pill like this. Furthermore, this scorpion's attack power is probably enough to kill any foundation forging expert. Long Chun jumped in shock. This giant pill was the result of 9 pills' medicinal energy being condensed into one. It was a supreme medicinal pill, and its effect was several times greater than the sum of all 9 medicinal pills. Those previous scorpions had only been an inch long, but this one was over a foot long. The difference between them was immense. The blazing dragon cauldron shook and the scorpion vanished, becoming a large pill. Black light revolved around it, and there were many lines on it that looked like centipedes lying in wait. The Mandara body tempering pill is a method of using poison to strengthen the body. The body can only be upgraded by it a limited number of times, and it'll have the greatest effect the first time. Its effect will be halved the second time, and after 5 times, the body will have formed a resistance to the poison, and it won't have any more effect. Looking at this fierce Mandara body tempering pill, Long Chen's hair stood on end. He wondered if he really was crazy. Fuck it. Long Chen clenched his teeth. Closing his eyes, he threw the giant Mandara body tempering pill into his mouth. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.